Welcome back to the Rodcast, Thursday edition of the Rodcast. That means we're getting closer and closer to the weekend, ladies and gentlemen. That means we're talking tons of football. Texas, Florida, we'll get into that. The injury report, availability report has come out, at least the first one for the week. We'll get into who the Longhorns have listed, as well as who the Florida Gators have listed on that availability report. We'll also go behind the burnt orange curtain next segment, start diving into that matchup a little bit more. We'll also dive into some other news, notes, and nuggets from the college football world. Of course, you got NFL action tonight, so we'll talk about the Thursday night football game happening tonight. Also, the Texans, big matchup coming up this weekend for the Texans with the Detroit Lions, maybe the hottest team in the NFL. So we'll get into that matchup a little bit as well. Dallas Cowboys, big news and bad news for the Dallas Cowboys. Big bad news, if you will, for the Dallas Cowboys relating to Dak Prescott's hamstring injury. We'll discuss that coming up here in this segment. We'll also get into their matchup. They got one coming up this weekend with a division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles, who have found their groove. Bad time to be playing the Eagles. We'll discuss that too coming up a little bit later on in the show and get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll talk about what right now is the hottest and the best offense, arguably, in the NFL. We haven't discussed them enough, but we will. We'll get into that and Raj's rant of the day a little bit later on. There's also discussions we'll talk about, we'll get into some other topics, of course, your usual favorites. We'll get into who said that. We'll get into off the record. We'll get into the big fat poll of the day, of course. We'll also get into who said that. We got a ton on the show for you. But let's not waste any time. Let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It is our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It is Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, brother? How are you?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Ready to go on a Thursday morning. Feel like this week is starting to fly by already, getting us ready. It is always weird the week after a bye week because, you kind of get in the grind of it. You're used to doing every week, and then you get to the week of you have the bye week, and you get relaxed, and then you get back in, and you're like, oh yeah, there's football coming up on Saturday. I got to care again. Just that 1 week off, and it's I hope the players don't have the same easiness to go into laziness as I do.
No, I think they'll be focused, but I feel you got to you got to get back on it. Got to get back on it.
Got to get back on it.
But intensity,
yes. Yeah. Just that realization, like, oh wait, no. I actually have to think about my plans for Saturday now, where I'm going to be to watch the game. Whereas last weekend, you just kind of got to fly by the seat of your pants. Now you got to make sure your plans are correct. So get ready for all that on a Thursday. Makes it a little bit easier. Let me introduce you to my co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is a new Rod, father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
Appreciate the intro as always. Let's get into it. We'll talk about the Thursday night football game tonight. You do have the Thursday night football game tonight. Division rivalry going on between the Ravens and the Bengals. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about the Texans, as I said too. And the more research I do about the Texans and their deficiencies in pass protection, the more paranoid I get about this matchup coming up versus the Lions. We'll dive into that a little bit too. But the Dak Prescott hamstring injury, there's an update there that we must address. And also we'll get into, speaking of injuries, the injury report, the availability report that came out, the first one of the week for the SEC, and the one that obviously relates to the Longhorns is the one that's top of mind for us. So we'll get into that too coming up here. And then we'll go behind the burnt orange curtain next segment and actually start breaking down that matchup. So first, let's get updated though. Let's get into the Horn headlines with Patrick. So let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Rockets handled the Spurs 127-100 with Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet scoring 21 in the game each. The Rockets led by 25 at halftime and kept pace in the second half to the easy victory. The Mavericks picked up a 119-99 win over the Bulls with Luka Doncic putting up 27 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Timberwolves in San Antonio. And in the NFL, the Bengals head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. The two teams played in an overtime thriller a month ago that the Ravens won 41-38. The 4-5 Bengals need a win to stay in the playoff hunt and the chase for the AFC North title. And that's your Horn headlines.
All right, appreciate the horn headlines there. Man, let's get to this Dak Prescott news, and then we'll talk about the news for the Longhorns and for the Florida Gators going into that matchup. But man, I wasn't surprised to see this, but it's still disappointing. It looks like Dak Prescott's season may be over. Jane Slater reporting. As the Cowboys weigh in on Dak Prescott's IR status, sources tell her the initial diagnosis is a partial avulsion of his hamstring tendon, which is partially torn off the bone. Just saying that gives me chills. She says, I'm told it typically takes more than a 4-week recovery. In some cases, they let it scar over, repair, and then strengthen. With that being said, Prescott is seeking other opinions, which is why there is currently a reluctance to place him on IR or make any determinations about a timeline for his return. And then the Dallas Morning News reported earlier, late yesterday, I should say, that it may require surgery. Still waiting on that second opinion, I guess, from Dak and his people. But kind of like we thought. I mean, you're not going to have Dak for the next month at the very best possible diagnosis. You won't have him for the next month. The worst case scenario, he's out for the season. Like I said, I think it's time for the Cowboys to start thinking about the draft. And like I said a couple of days ago, they're closer to tanking than they are to competing for the division or even competing for a championship. Of course, it's time to start the tank. It's time for the season. It's time to start thinking about that high draft pick, guys. Sorry.
I know. And I mean,
it's a done deal.
And I get you want to stay competitive, but at a certain point, when you're already kind of pushed out of it, you're already third in your division.
And that division is pretty good now. You got two teams, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders, who are 6 and 7 win teams at this point.
Yeah. And that injury, it just, like what they're describing, that injury seems much worse than what we thought it was going to be, which was a hamstring strain, which then it becomes into, well, can you re-aggravate it? This is much more of like, oh, well, you can rip the whole thing off the bone.
Yeah, partially torn off the bone.
And I think you just made a trade for a project wide receiver. You're clearly trying to bring up a lot of young guys. You're going to be important in the draft. You need Dak in the offseason. You need Dak in training camp. You need Dak to be ready for next season. You just
for your new coach, by the way.
For your new coach, you need all of these things to be ready and to go, well, man, maybe we have an outside shot at being a wild card team and sneaking into these playoffs. And we won't really be good enough to do much in them, but maybe we could sneak in. I don't know if it's worth it to risk, hurting CeeDee Lamb more and putting him in this week, which I know he wants to play, and I know people want to see him play. And I just can't, for Dak Prescott, understand why you would want to pay a guy that amount of money and then risk injuring him long term, having him miss the beginning of next season, have this surgery where it's it becomes a 6 months to a year time frame where he's ripped it completely off the bone because you couldn't wait to stick him back out there. It just doesn't make sense. I get the concept of right now they're looking. I think it's more right now that they're looking for the other opinions, that it won't take as long as they're saying let it scar over and be, you're not able to really return to rehab or anything. You just got to kind of wait. I think I get why Dak wouldn't want to do that as much. But maybe it is that they go, look, we know we're going to put you on. We just got to figure out, are we putting you on the designated to return IR or not?
Yeah, it's going to be for the 4-week one or your season. I think it's sounds like it's pretty close to season ending, but that's okay. I mean, if it's 4-week and they can, but like I said, that doesn't sound like hell. Nico Collins has been out for 4 weeks. He just passed the test. We'll get into that too. Yeah. Talking about the Texans, he didn't practice yesterday, but apparently he passed all the required tests for them to activate him this week if they want to, and they have not confirmed one way or the other if they're going to do that. But my point is that wasn't even considered a serious one, and they're still being careful with it. Now I know Dak's not a wide receiver, but man, just talking about partially torn off the bone. I'd give him as much time to heal as possible. So I'm thinking at least six weeks, because even in Jane Slater's report, she said typically it takes more than a 4-week recovery. So we're talking about more than the 4 weeks. So I'm thinking 6 weeks just to be careful.
Yeah, and I mean
6 weeks into the season. I mean, guys, that's the season.
Yeah,
to me that the season is going to be over by then.
Look, if Trey Lance or Cooper Rush takes you all that way, keep rolling with them, man.
Yes, but I think the Dak Prescott option I think needs to be taken off the table. I do. I think if he's going to be out for 6 weeks, yes, he's going to be out for the season. For now, I will say that's a great point. If I assume that you're not going to be in it in the playoff hunt with Trey Lance or with Cooper Rush, 6 weeks or two more, basically 6 weeks more into the season. If you are and you want to bring Dak back and he's healthy, okay, then I totally understand it. I assume by that time you will be out of it. So my point is just don't rush him back. Don't rush him back at all. And then you have to figure out whether it's even worth it to bring him back, and you should put him on a season-ending IR, which I think is more likely at this point too. Like, because I'm with you. You're going to need him for what is going to be the reinvention of the Cowboys here in the next few months.
That's what I'm saying.
Hire a new coach and all that kind of stuff.
You're not that far away from turning it around in the offseason. Like this is not a team that is a full rebuild or anything else. And
especially if you get a good draft pick, a really high draft
if you're getting high draft picks, you're getting high draft picks in every round. You're getting, you're picking up and
you draft well.
You draft well. There's a lot to be positive about in the long term. But yeah, to risk it all in this theory of, and I don't think they are. I mean, it's clear he's not going to play this week. And in reality, if it's 6 weeks and you don't put him on the IR, you're just wasting a roster spot. But
agreed.
I mean, I don't think they're going to stick him back out there. CD Lamb's the one that I get. He wants to play this week, and I'm sure he wants to get his stats up and whatever else he wants to be able to do. I probably wouldn't put him out there this week, just seeing how much pain he was in last week. But that one is, to me, a little bit more. I know they're just saying it's an AC joint sprain, and I'd be a little bit more cautious with him as well, just to get him back 100% when he comes back. But for Dak, he's not playing this week, clearly. So whether they put him on IR this week or not, or it's season ending, he's not playing this week. Like, we just know that. So
I think it's going to be season ending when it's all said and done. But it could, like I said, it could just be maybe they want to wait to 6 weeks and they don't care about the roster spot, and that's fine too. Now the question is, are you going to go with Cooper Rush? It seems like they are, instead of Trey Lance. But as Jerry said on 105.3 The Fan, you could see both of them. So, and I imagine that means if maybe there's a package for Trey Lance, or maybe if Cooper Rush is not, getting it done, not making enough plays, which it's going to be tough on Cooper Rush in this offense, man. It was tough on Dak. We talked about how this wasn't a Dak-friendly offense. I don't know how it's going to be a Cooper Rush-friendly offense. I will say they are finding some of a running game, though, because they finally figured out, which, we said, with 2-3 weeks into the season, that Rico Dowdle's their best option at running back. They finally figured that out. So at least going forward, you do have a spark in the running game. But, man, going up against the Eagles right now, you got the Cowboys, the second worst rush defense in the NFL, going up against Saquon Barkley and the Eagles rushing attack with Jalen Hurts. It's just not a good matchup.
Well, and I'll just say, just because it is the Cowboys, Rico Dowdle is clearly the right answer.
Yes.
Zeke was suspended last week. That's why they didn't play him. Not because, he didn't take a trip. Sorry, he wasn't suspended. He got paid for the game, even though he wasn't there.
Yes. Yes.
But he was not part of the team. So they may run him another 10 times this week. It would be crazy, but they may do it. Crazy. So they may run him another 10 times this week. Just because, Jerry says run him 10 times. Well, I want to run him.
Late for meetings, tarred out, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, he may. I mean, am I wrong that he may, though?
No.
So
you're not.
So that's what I'm saying. So I get it. Rico Dowdle is playing better. It does not mean he will. I mean, he'll get the lion's share of carries. I can't imagine that they'll be that crazy.
No.
So
he's averaging over 5 yards per carry in the last 3 games.
Yeah. No, I imagine he'll get the lion's share of carries, but he will get pulled out some, and they'll put Zeke in. But yeah, I think now that you have a better area to prepare for Cooper Rush and the teams will be prepared, it's going to be a bit rougher for him than it was when he comes in relief and looks pretty good. He's still a decent, very serviceable quarterback, so he'll be okay.
He used to win. He used to win games. Yeah. I'm not so, but this is a different Cowboys team. Is my point. They they have some of those glaring deficiencies, but the run game was one of them. And right now, the running game looks like it's improving. They're definitely going to need that to continue to be the case with Cooper Rush as the starting quarterback. And what you said about CeeDee Lamb, that's interesting too. I mean, I wouldn't rush CeeDee Lamb back out there. I've had shoulder injuries, dude. They linger. I know CeeDee Lamb will get the best care, and I'm sure the best the best training staff methods to make sure that he's ready to go. But at this point for the Cowboys, I wouldn't risk it. Of course, CeeDee Lamb can play, but I wouldn't risk putting him out there prematurely. To put him in danger at this point, because it's not really worth it for the Cowboys. We shall see, though. But the Eagles, they're starting to play their best football. They had versus Jacksonville. Saquon Barkley had 159 yards, and he's averaging now 115 yards per game rushing. He's on pace to run for more than 1,900 yards and score 17 touchdowns. This is kind of that Saquon Barkley that everybody was afraid of potentially going to the Eagles, and he's becoming that in that Kellen Moore offense. Last 4 games coming out of the bye, Eagles figure something out. Their average game is basically 42 runs for 196 yards, run pass ratio 2-1 on early downs, and the last 4 games, 38 explosive plays, 14 explosive plays allowed, plus 24 explosive play margin. Said the last month or so, last 3 games or so, they really started to hit their stride. That's the concern for the Dallas Cowboys, who are the 30th worst rush defense, if you want to say the 30th. So they've actually gotten better. They were last, then they were 31st a couple weeks ago, and now they're 30th. So give it up for the Cowboys. There is improvement happening. It's it's hard to identify, and it's not necessarily in all the areas you would hope, but the Cowboys, some areas they are getting better. We just talked about Rico Dowdle and the rush defense getting better, but I don't know if they'll be able to stand the test of what the Philadelphia Eagles are going to bring to the table. We'll get into that. We'll talk about that matchup a little bit more. Let's get into the availability report, the injury report that comes out for the SEC, and you have multiple injury reports. So there'll be another one out today and another one out before the actual game. But the first one here has, for the Longhorns, first and foremost, you have Derek Williams and CJ Baxter, Christian Clark, and Velton Gardner. Those guys are out. Velton Gardner's been out for a couple of weeks. It was reported that it was an eye injury, some freaky eye injury in practice. The reason he's going to be out for the rest of the season too. So that snake-bitten running back position continues that bad luck streak. You got 3 running backs out for the season at that position, which means you only got really 3 scholarship running backs available, with Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, and Jarrett Gibson. I guess Ryan Niblett now probably works a little bit more at running back. Maybe he's been sprinkled in some of those packages. So I guess you got 4 there in terms of scholarship running backs. So really can't afford any more bad luck there. On the D line, Vernon Broughton is going to be out for the first half because of the targeting penalty that he got in the Vanderbilt game, in the second half of that Vanderbilt game. So he'll be back in the second half. That does matter. We'll talk about why that matters here in a second. Andrew Makuba, he was out for the Vanderbilt game because of that lower leg injury. He is now questionable. I assume because he's been practicing, and Sark said he has been practicing, that he will be upgraded to probable and will be available to play. Whether they're going to play him or not, I'm not sure, but I think he will be available. Colton Vasek, actually, a little surprised that Colton Vasek ended up on this. There's no report about why, but the edge rusher is questionable here on this report. And then Isaiah Bond is listed as probable. He's been practicing all week long, so I'm assuming he also will be upgraded by the end of the week or right before the game. So the injury report for the Longhorns looking pretty good. Not sure about what the Colton Vasek injury could be, but that's something I guess we should keep our eye on. And I think Andrew Makuba will eventually be upgraded because he's been practicing all week long, and we haven't heard any setbacks with him too. All right, so get to the Florida side. And Florida, they're a mash unit right now. They have, all these guys are out. Jakeem Jackson, Jason Marshall Jr., Eugene Wilson III, Trayon Webb, Graham Mertz, of course, Asa Turner, Khalil Jackson, Devin Moore, Devin Manuel, Jamal Lyons, all out. There are a few of those guys that are significant. Jason Marshall Jr. is their number 1 corner. They got 4 DBs that are out.
Jeez.
I don't care where they're listed on your depth chart. That's a lot, right? They got Jakeem Jackson's out. Jason Marshall Jr., he was their number 1 corner, so that is significant. He's out. Asa Turner is a DB. He's out. Devin Moore, another DB, he's out. And they got another DB listed as questionable. They got 5 DBs on this report. 4 of them are out. Okay. Well, I think Sark should attack that. The depth at DB for them, for sure, is suffering a little bit. In addition to that, Eugene Wilson, the third, he's one of their receivers. I think he actually is their best overall receiver. We used to work him in the slot, but he got injured early in the season and really has not been 100% since then. So he's out. And the guy right behind him, Elijah Badger, who is he's the most explosive receiver on the roster. Elijah Badger has, how about that? I went and looked this up. He has 4 receptions of 40 plus yards on the season. Only 4 receivers in the SEC have more 40 plus yard receptions on the season. So he's an explosive threat for them. He's averaging over 23 yards per catch. And he's got 24 receptions. He'll be considered their number 1 target now that Eugene Wilson is out. And so Elijah Badger is questionable. So if he ends up being downgraded, that's a severe blow to the passing game. Passing game already is going to suffer a severe blow. Also Montrell Johnson Jr., the running back, who is second team all SEC last season. He's been nicked up and he wasn't available in the Georgia game. He's listed as questionable here. That's also important because they may have the deepest group of running backs that Texas has faced if Montrell Johnson Jr. is available. It's possible they could end up having, because that group with Montrell Johnson, he's averaging over 5 yards per rush. Jacoby Jackson averaging 5.7, and Jaden Ball averaging around 4.6. That's a really deep group. If Montrell Johnson's available, that could be something that presents problems to Texas, just because they got mass on the offensive line, but they got skill in the backfield. I mean, think about it. That's why we talk about Georgia's Trevor Etienne and how he made some plays setting up Texas defense, and that's an NFL running back. He was at Florida and left because of these guys, because he wanted more opportunity and wanted to, go to a better offense, and he left. So it's to me, I think it's actually a strength for Florida. And considering here's the big news. So we kind of buried the lead. Talking about the injury report, DJ Lagway ended up practicing yesterday.
Jeez,
I don't know how that happened. Yeah.
So he just, for whatever reason, they just thought it was something way, 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 way worse than it was.
Apparently so. Yeah, that's what they're reporting, is that they thought it was a severe injury. Well, we know they did because they carted him out.
Yeah,
they carted him off the field. You don't get carted off the field usually for hamstring injuries unless they're pretty severe. He got carted off the field, and remember the team came out to console him. Remember, the team came off the sideline and they were all consoling him and comforting him and supporting him. And I thought, okay, so it wasn't necessarily what was reported. So they didn't report anything that it was a severe injury. I think the media did. They didn't confirm that. But I just think the reaction from everybody, bringing out, having to cart him off the field and team coming out, I guess the assumption was that it was way worse than it was. But the reports were that DJ Lagway practiced. Now, I don't know how. Was he limited in practice? I'm not sure. How mobile is he so he does have a hamstring injury. How mobile is it? We were talking about Dak's hamstring injury. Hell, Dak was feeling it when he first got the injury on a scramble, but still went back on the next play, and he felt it when he was trying to throw. He was trying to throw the football on the line, across the field. He was trying to throw it on a line to the opposite hash. And that's when he felt it. And so even if DJ Lagway, let's say they're using him, they're putting him out there and they want him to operate from the pocket, all he needs to do is hand the ball off, and the hamstring injury won't affect him in that regard as much. If he's going to throw, it's still going to affect his mechanics, his ability to drive the football. To drive it and to throw the ball on the line. I mean, maybe he can still throw it deep, but I imagine he'll be short, not being able to follow through and not be able to use all of his base to throw the football. I cannot imagine, but he is a freak. He's a freakish athlete. Freakish athletes, sometimes they heal like Wolverine in X-Men. So he may have something like that going on. I wouldn't doubt it, but that's surprising. That is That is mind blowing, actually. So there's a reason he wasn't ruled out. He wasn't ruled out. So now Texas does actually have to do their due diligence. They got to prepare for DJ Lagway and for Aiden Warner. They got to have 2 game plans.
Yeah.
But I think I just don't see it. I don't see him being out. Texas has the number 1 defense in the country, guys. That's the best defense in the country, and you're going to put out a quarterback that maybe limping around and has lost his dual threat ability. He's not that accurate from the pocket. I mean, nothing against DJ Lagway. The problems that he presents is because he is a dynamic dual threat quarterback that can extend plays, that can improvise, his second reaction ability, his ability to throw the football on the run, and his cannon of an arm. But prior to his, injury in that Georgia game, he was 2 of 6 for 47 yards. He did have a 43-yard touchdown, and that's kind of what he is, right? He's there's a boom or bust factor with him too. So it's going to be interesting to see who they put out there first. Is it Lagway and they just see what Lagway can do, or is it Aiden Warner they put out there and this is all gamesmanship, or is this some combination of both? They rotate those guys in depending on what they want to accomplish.
I just don't. I don't get these guys playing with injuries. Like, I get Texas a big game and you want to go out there, but I mean, you're 19 years old. And to say, no, I was carted off the field last week. What's the worst that could happen?
I don't know. Maybe they overreacted with the cart. I don't know.
I mean, clearly they overreacted with the cart. Clearly he could have jogged off the dang field.
It seems like they could have just put him arm, one person on each arm.
He probably could have sprinted in the locker room how he's feeling this week. I mean, I don't get how he's practicing. You will cart a guy off and then he's okay. I mean, it feels like I don't know if it was literally that I know that if you hear a pop or something like that, sometimes you go extra,
Yeah, that's true. Psychologically, it can have an effect.
Or if this is the first injury he's had of something like that in his career, that feels hard to believe, but that he just thought it was going to be much worse than it was.
Yeah, because he did have a significant injury, maybe in last year. So he's had one. So yeah, you could be right. Maybe it's like psychological.
I don't know what it was, but yeah, that's it. I mean, hamstrings, even like minor strains, you probably are going to stay off it for more than what has it been? 4 days?
Oh yeah. I agree with you. Just a regular strain. You're like, nah, you need to take it easy. But not this dude. Like I said, maybe he's just a freak of nature. He is a physical, freak. He's an X-Man, but I didn't realize he was that much. If he goes out there and plays, that's going to be that'll really be some modern Marvel type stuff going on.
But this is this is also. I mean, it feels like that's a certain point too. If he goes out there and then hits the ground again, at what point do you look at Billy Napier and just go, hey, why would you allow this to happen?
The trainers, somebody's got to clear them. I mean, there's a training staff that's got to clear you to play, and they clear you to practice. I don't know if that clears you to play all the time. So I don't know how it's going to look. No. I don't even know how he moves around without limping.
No. Yeah, limited at practice. Don't know what that means either.
Yeah, you don't know. That's what I said. Could be games, but he literally could have went out there and warmed up, and they were like, "All right, no, you're good."
Yeah, no, he could have thrown sitting down.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't know unless, exactly. So I still think it's gamesmanship. I think Aiden Warner is going to be the guy. I think they're just, you know what? And it's smart, by the way. Force Texas to have to use their limited practice time to prepare for both quarterbacks, come up with 2 game plans. It's a smart thing to do. It's a smart way to go about it. I think it'll be Aiden Warner out there, but we shall see. It's gotten interesting.
Well, and that's the other part is, if it's Lagway, you're like, well, is he still a dual threat quarterback?
No.
Because apparently he may be.
I would love to see how I would love to see him run. I guess you'll be watching him in warmups if he's out there. That's what you'll do as a coach. Is you're like, all right, we got to watch him in warmups. We got to, we got to see in warmups. And you know what? This mystery, though, I will say is giving Florida, it's not a big advantage, but it is a slight advantage because Texas has no idea at the quarterback position what they're going to present. You don't know how Lagway's going to look.
Yeah.
Right. You don't know Aiden Warner. I mean, he's a walk-on transfer from Yale. I mean, you have no idea. You gotta go try to scrummage up some practice film potentially of him. I know you got connections at Yale and try to figure out, hey, is there some game film on this guy? Maybe I can get I got a scrimmage. I got some scrimmage film on him.
Yeah.
When he scrimmage, can I get any kind of tape on this guy? Or they don't have much. And maybe that mystery, I don't know how long of an advantage it will be in the game, may last you a drive before adjustments are made. I don't know how long it'll help you, but yeah, that mystery is advantageous, I should say, to Florida at this point. Like
Yeah,
still, but you're still a
it's
21 point or whatever point.
yeah, it's
underdog anyway.
advantageous up until the point that
Texas knows who it is.
and that they can perform, because you
Right.
go, well, it's advantageous unless, of course, you put out a quarterback who's not very good, and then all those advantages fall away very quickly.
Yeah,
we can't make the throws and we can't make the decisions.
I agree. And you can be good, and Texas defense is better.
Yeah,
Like Texas defense is a good. It's just that's a good defense. I mean, it's one of the best, if not the best, defense in the country. So you also not only you have to be, as you pointed out, capable and competent, but you have to be extraordinary to go out there against this at home. By the way, coming off a bye week.
Yeah, no, I mean they had no problem intercepting Carson Beck several times.
Yes. That's
so
the highest level quarterback they played,
and with the highest level receivers and the highest level all of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't know. Like I said, it's good for Billy Napier, and it could be a miraculous feat if he ends up starting or even playing in the game. Honestly, I think it would be pretty miraculous. All right, so there you go. That's the scuttlebutt surrounding the availability report. Is that DJ Lagway did indeed practice? He was limited in practice. They said a little. I think they said he practiced a little. I don't know what that means. Practicing a little.
Yeah.
Is that 2 periods out of the 18 period practice? Are we talking about 9 out of the 18? What is it? I'm not sure what that means.
Did he jog out to practice? Or did he limp out to practice? Or did he what?
I don't know. Like I said, it is to me, like I said, it is a mind-blowing thing if that hamstring injury, either there was a ridiculous overreaction by them, the team and the training staff, or this is some medical marvel. I don't know which one it is. Could be. We'll see. All right, we'll come back. We'll get into Texas, Florida. Get a little preview of that matchup. We'll also talk about the Texas defense at this point in the season, and we're 2/3 way done through the season. We're talking about this Texas defense, guys, as one of the best defenses in the history of Texas football. It's definitely going to finish in that conversation. So we come back, we'll talk about where they may rank all time, and we'll give you some of the statistical feats they've already achieved so far this year and where they're ranked nationally. It's a weird thing. They are indeed as good as advertised, but they haven't been truly tested. They have been very lucky in the draw of offenses they've had to face. I do think they're good as advertised, but also, the offenses they've had to face, once again, going into the Florida game, could be a healthy DJ Lagway to present some problems. Nope. You get limped up, hamstrung DJ Lagway and Aiden Warner. Right? It's just it's worked out really good for them. Like luck has been on their side. It like that. I think it is both. I think it's both. So people are like, oh, they haven't been tested. That defense isn't that good. Like, no, they are that good, but they also have not been tested. I think both things are true. We'll come back and discuss it right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to talk some Texas football. Go behind the burnt orange curtain, discuss their game coming up with Florida. We've been talking about the quarterback situation for Florida. Let's flip the script, jump to the other side of this matchup, and talk about that Texas offense versus the Florida defense. We were just discussing the availability report that came out yesterday. And one of the things that stands out is the the amount of defensive backs that are listed on this availability report for Florida. Jason Marshall Jr., who was their top cornerback, he's out. Then you have other DBs, Jakeem Jackson, Asa Turner, and Devin Moore, also all out. So that's 4 DBs that are out. And then you have another defensive back, Dijon Johnson, who is listed on here as questionable. You got a lot of DBs on here. In addition to this little nugget that I found doing some research about this matchup, that Florida 111th in the country in 20-plus yard passes allowed. 33 of them they've allowed so far this season. And you got a lot of DBs right now on your injury report. This seems like this should be a game where the that explosive element of the passing game that some people have been have been clamoring for, that verticality back in the offense that some have been clamoring for. This might be the game to get it. But even if it's not that kind of game, say Florida plays you like Vanderbilt did, right? The safety's deep, giving you the numbers underneath, giving you the perimeter. And if that is the case and they do that, well, they have 94 missed tackles on the season. That's a lot of missed tackles early on. And Texas has a lot of speed on the perimeter with those attached screens. You're going to get Isaiah Bond back. He was listed as probable on that availability report. Against Vanderbilt, I mean, that's what the offense was built on, whether you're talking about Jaden Blue on the outside or Trey Wisner with the check down and the swing screens, DeAndre Moore, Isaiah Bond. I think that could be a problem for Florida, trying to come up and tackle those guys. You're already shown that you have some issues, been exposed with your missed tackles so far this season. And Sark is brilliant at putting his speed in space and forcing you to have to come up and tackle those guys in space with 7, 8, 9 yards of cushion. So that could be a problem. Or so they play Texas, with deep safeties trying to prevent the big play. I could see that being an issue for them if they decide they want to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think there will be times where they'll decide to blitz Texas, to come after Texas. They got to get them in a predictable passing situation. But I think they will try to do that. They can get Texas in a second and long and a third long situation early on. And we don't know if Sark is going to try to run the ball against Florida. Florida is 88th in rush defense. That actually is their Achilles heel defensively. They got some good athletes in the back seven, but their rush defense has been struggling all season long. They don't give up a lot of explosive plays in the run game. They've only allowed 8 rushes of 20+ yards so far this season, but you can run the ball against them. But Texas running game, as I've talked about, it's just an average running game. That's not an insult to Texas at all. It is just an average running game in terms of the running backs and their contribution, the offensive line's push in the running game. And if you're Florida, can you take advantage of that? Could you neutralize the Texas running game with even numbers in the box or with a lighter box, because they do got some big bodies there. And if you can do that, and then force Texas have to throw into those 2 high safety shells to throw into your numbers advantage in the back end. I mean, that's the way that Florida could go. Now, Sark, he supplements the running game. So if you take away the running game, he's smart enough to know, well, I still need that element. And that's where you get the quick throws to, the swing screens, Jaden Blue out in the flat, Trey Wisner out in the flat, the tunnel and bubble screens with Isaiah Bond. That is just a long handoff. Those are extensions of the running game. So not only do you got to stop the traditional running game for Texas, but you got to stop that extension of the running game. And that's usually where Sark decides to pivot if the running game can't, bear some fruit. And it hasn't been bearing fruit. And I think that's why he's starting off the games now that way. Because when Vanderbilt, it presents you with a too high safety and you have the numbers advantage in the box, because at its most rudimentary form, that's all football is, right? Numbers advantage. If they got the numbers advantage on the outside, they got the numbers advantage in the back end. That means you're losing the numbers advantage somewhere, and they're losing it in the box. And if that's the case, you should be able to run the football. But Sark, I don't think, trusts his run game to consistently be able to stay ahead of the chains and gain those chunk yards when he needs them. And I think because of that, he relies on the outside extension of the running game. And if that's going to be the case here, how does Florida attack that? And can Florida tackle those guys out in space? Something else to keep in mind with this matchup with the Texas offense versus that Florida defense. I guarantee you, and I don't even know how early into the game we're going to see it, guarantee you're going to see Florida blitz at a relatively high rate. And they're coming with the same blitzes we know. We've been seeing them for the last 2-3 weeks. They're coming through the A gap. They're coming off the edge with the boundary corner and the slot corner. And they're going to come with delayed blitzes and delayed rushers. We've been telling you for the last 2 weeks, that's what you've been seeing. I told you guys before the Vanderbilt game. Hey, Vanderbilt's going to take a lot of that game plan from the Georgia game, and they're going to take some of what Venables did. Well, I didn't know they'd be as gratuitous with their usage of some of those concepts, but they were. They just gambled, and they lost, actually, too. They lost half the time, but when they gambled, they actually paid off. They ended up getting 2 tipped interceptions. They ended up getting 4 sacks in that game, and a lot of it was a lot of it was them gambling, taking risks with that defense, and the gamble was just blitzing off the edge, blitzing off the corner. And if you asked me if I was Vanderbilt, if I thought that was a successful game plan, even though they were beat for some touchdowns when they blitzed and beaten for some big explosive plays, hey, it's worth it if you can force a couple of turnovers and you can get a couple of sacks, and that's exactly what they did. So if I'm Florida, I'm stealing that game plan. I'm coming after Quinn, and I'm going to see if I can force him to panic or see if I can get the offensive line to, miss an assignment in pass protection and see how Texas handles that pressure. Because that was, to me, the story coming out of the Vanderbilt game for the offense was really, some people were concerned about, the running game or how Quinn's going to bounce back. I think Quinn bounced back fine. To me, the story of it was your offensive line and your overall pass protection also regressed. Because remember the Georgia game is just Kirby Smart, him just it really showing you a masterclass in defensive strategy. They got to Texas in a number of different ways. Got to Texas 7 times, 7 sacks, and it was simulated pressures. It was interior blitzes. They came off the corner with a cornerback blitz. They had 0 blitzes. They had double mug pressures. They got to Quinn in like 4 or 5 different ways. So it wasn't one specific way that they targeted, one concept that Texas had issues with. They had issues with everything. They got beaten 1-on-1s. They got beat 3-man rush, 4-man rush, 5-man blitz, 6-man blitz, 0 blitz. They got beat with everything. In the Vandy game, which is not, they know they're not as talented as Georgia, they were able to isolate just specific concepts. They were like, hey, we can do that. We can't do everything Georgia do because we ain't got, we ain't got Mikael Williams, right? We ain't got Walker. We ain't got NFL first, second round picks on our defensive front. But conceptually, there's some things that we can do. And they took that cornerback blitz and the slot cornerback blitz, and they took the A-gap blitzes, that concept that Georgia ran a lot of, some of those double barrel blitzes, and they went and took the delayed rusher and delayed blitzes. And then I went and looked at the 6 big defensive plays for Vanderbilt. All right, it was the 2 tipped interceptions and the 4 sacks. For 5 of those 6 plays involved either a cornerback blitz of some kind or an A-gap blitz, actually, because on one play they had both, or an A-gap blitz. They found something. And if you're Florida, you also got to test that. I mean, you got to test whether Texas has fixed those issues in the bye week. I think they have. Of course they have, because they notice the same trends that we do. And then they'll be tested with it. And I think Florida will do that early. You got to do that while you're still in the game. before you get blown out. You got to start throwing out some of that stuff. So I think you'll see it early in that matchup versus Florida. So for the Texas offense, have you solved those problems? If you have solved those problems, I think they really will coast versus that Florida defense. Florida's defense is going to make, their athletes, they're going to make some plays, but ultimately Texas should be able to get back. But that mojo that Sark is talking about, they should get back their mojo offensively versus this Florida defense. If they don't, then maybe the mojo was a Fugazi. Maybe they just got to SEC play, playing against SEC athletes, and this is what the offense is. Not the offense we saw early in the season that seemed like it was going to be a prolific juggernaut of an offense. So we'll see. I think they will bounce back. And coming off a bye week, you're coming off a bye week, and Florida's coming off their most physical game they've played all season long. They're beat up. We just gave you the injury report. They're as beat up as they've been all season long, especially at the quarterback position, the most important position. You're coming off a bye week, and you should be polished. Your execution should be pristine. You should be focused early on. You should be physical because, you are fresher than they are. If I don't see that early for Texas, that's a bit alarming in this matchup. All right, we come back. We got the topic for the big fat poll of the day, and we got your musically themed day of the week coming back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn.
Back on the Rodcast on a Thursday morning, and that means it's a new theme Thursday, where I pick a theme each week, and we pick songs based on that theme. And the theme this week is Quincy. It's Quincy Jones. We're going to play a song since he passed away earlier this week. We'll play you songs he produced, and this is a difficult one because he produced a lot of songs, but I kind of tried to go in different ways, show different things of his career, of what he did. So we know Michael. We start off with Michael because he did a ton of Michael Jackson, and I love his story about this one. That that very distinctive part in the middle, or the beginning of the song, it's the violins, and apparently Michael came to him and said, "I don't." He goes, "You got to get rid of the violins in the beginning because they're messing up my groove." He's like, "No, they're good. They're really important." They're like, "Well, what did Michael think?" He's like, "Well, the song was number one, so I think it was okay."
Yeah, no doubt. I think he was right. Quincy was right.
Quincy was right on that one.
Yeah, he was right.
So we'll be playing different songs that Quincy Jones produced all show long today. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day today. Text line's open 512-447-3776, and we'll get the post up on X at the Horn ATX.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
So we asked this a couple weeks ago, and then what Rod was just talking about, we'll ask it again this week. It's about the O-line. How many sacks will Florida get against Texas? How many sacks this week for Florida against Texas? We know that Texas has allowed 11 in the past 2 weeks. Before that, it was 1 to OU, 2 to Mississippi State. They only allowed 3 in all of non-conference, playing the 4 non-conference games. If you look over at Florida, their non-conference, they did get after the quarterback, 4 against Samford, 5 against UCF. In SEC play, they've had 3 against Tennessee, 3 against Mississippi State, 2 they had in Georgia last week, none against Texas A&M, and 1 against Kentucky, if you're looking at what they've done. So looked pretty good in non-conference play. And in conference play, they're still good. They've gotten 3 sacks in 2 games against Tennessee and Mississippi State, 2 teams that pass a lot, which if you're expecting Texas to pass a lot, then they get after them. Georgia, kind of more balanced. They got 2 there. A&M was playing with Marcel Reed, so less throws in that game. And Kentucky runs the ball a lot as well. So the run games, they weren't able to get to the quarterback. Makes sense. You're not going to be going after him. They're going to be going after Quinn Ewers, though, throwing the football. So that'll ask you, how many sacks will Florida get against Texas? The options this week, not as good as the last time I asked. Last time I think it was 0, 1, 2, and 3 plus. We've thrown that out the window. We are now gone with 0, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 plus.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. That's a great. I mean, because Florida's, they're not elite at getting after the quarterback. They're not bad at getting after the quarterback too. They got a couple of guys I think you need to be concerned with, but no, they don't have a war daddy or some elite pass rusher. But Danny didn't have one either, in my opinion. They ended up getting 4 sacks. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
and that's the thing is you got 2 against Georgia, you got 3 against Tennessee, 3 against Mississippi State for this Florida team. So they can get after them. They can draw it up enough to go after the quarterback and get 2 to 3 against some teams that throw the ball. The teams they didn't get against in the SEC, they don't really throw the ball a lot. Yeah. So you're going to sit back and try and play that run defense a little bit more. So that makes sense. But with Texas, if you don't really have the option to run the ball, now maybe you get the run game going and that lowers it down. Maybe you can get to the outside on these guys. We talked about that a little bit before this week, that you can get to the outside maybe, that they do have some really big humans, but their lateral movement may not be as great. So if you're able to get them trying to go after the quarterback, trying to go after Quinn, and Blue or Wisner is able to break it outside and break some big runs, that may make them have to set back a little bit more and not go after the quarterback. So, but that is your question today. 0, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 plus. How many sacks will Florida get against Texas?
Yeah, they got 2 guys with at least 3 sacks on the season. That's 3 guys with at least. It's Tyreek Sapp is a defensive line. He's 6'3", 251, so likely on the edge. And then there's George Gums, who's a edge rusher, defensive end. He's a little undersized, 6'4", about 2 215, 220. So those are the two guys, but yeah, they don't really have a ton of guys who get after the quarterback really. But against Texas, like I said, I guarantee you they will blitz Texas more than they normally blitz, just because we've seen it work in the last 3 weeks. So we shall see. I think the offensive line, I know they've been ridiculed and criticized during this bye week, and I know they've heard some of that. This is a group they wanted to be up for the Joe Moore Award. That ain't happening this season. I mean, they can still strive for that, but they're not going to win the award for being the best offensive line in the country. Now, when you have back-to-back weeks when you allow 11 sacks in back-to-back weeks, so they're not going to win that award, but they were playing at that level earlier this season, especially as a pass protection unit. They got to get back to that. They got to find that again. I want to say right now, 2 is kind of the number I'm thinking about. I think Texas is going to try to throw the ball a little bit. Like I said, I told you about the injuries in the secondary. They allow 100. They're 111th in 20 plus yard pass plays allowed. I think Texas will try to throw it a little bit. And hell, remember how snarky he was when they asked him about the short, quick passing game, and he says, "Hey, if they come up and they're more aggressive, I'll throw it over their head." I think he's going to try to force a little bit of some explosive vertical shots in this game. I think he's going to dial a few of them up, especially because now they're back at home. He likes to get the crowd into it. So I think that's what you'll get. And, you got to hold the ball a little bit longer to do that. And I think Florida is going to emphasize blitzing, emphasize pressure packages, A-gap blitzes, delayed blitzes off the edge, just because of how successful it was versus Vandy and how successful it's been in the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to say 2 right now. There you go. That's probably too many. Too many for Longhorn fans, considering they've allowed 11, but you allowed 4 and you allowed 7, then 4. I'm just going to go with the trend that you're just decreasing it a little bit, and maybe 2. There you go.
Hey.
How many? What were your options again?
0, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and 5
So
plus.
I'm a 1 to 2.
You're a 1 to 2. All right.
Yeah.
I think we feel pretty good.
They're 5 plus. We're in trouble. If they're 5 plus,
I agree. But last time we said with Vanderbilt, I gave you 3 plus was the option, and they ended up with 4. And we went, hey, if they're 3 plus, we're in trouble.
I think I said we're in trouble if we get 3 plus. And
it was 4.
And I felt like we're some trouble there. I think we all went to the bye week saying pass protection, that's an issue. Yeah, if they get if they get more than, like you said, 5 plus, they get that, we panic button. We will come in, we will press it, we will have the sounder ready to go. I'm gonna say 2, and 2 is, and it's not elite, that's not great, but that's not bad by any stretch of the imagination either. Going up against a Florida team that's got some good athletes. All right, so there you go. That's the topic for the big fat poll of the day. We'll continue to discuss Texas versus Florida, but when we come back, we'll dive into the NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll preview the Texans versus the Detroit Lions, a great way to measure up whether the Texans have do they have championship caliber talent? Do they have what it takes to be a contender? Because right now it looks like the Detroit Lions are playing some of the best football in the NFL. They got that coming up, so we'll talk about that matchup. Also, more news about the Dallas Cowboys. We'll discuss their upcoming matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles. Looks like there won't be a Dak Prescott, may not even be a CeeDee Lamb. I don't even know if it's worth previewing, but we'll discuss that matchup too. And there is right now the best offense in the NFL may be this team, and not only are they elite this year, they may be talking about them being generationally elite in terms of where they stand compared to other offenses in the last 25 years. We'll talk about that when we get into Rod's rant, all of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host Patrick Davis he comes up with a creative new theme, and all the songs that are featured on New Theme Thursday have to do with that specific idea, that specific topic or theme. And today it is essentially a tribute to Quincy Jones, the music icon who passed away this week at the age of 91 years old. And so all the songs were projects of Quincy Jones in some way,
produced by
fashion.
or played on or
Yeah, I mean he did. Yeah, he just he did so many damn things. I mean, it's really hard to keep up, and in all genres of music too. That's the crazy thing. I mean, you think it's kind of stuck with the R&B and the soul, and no, man, he was all over the place.
Yeah.
Pretty
and
expansive
prolifically
project
long.
there.
Yeah, because that's a 1963 hit right there.
I mean, the dude was in it for what 50, 60 years,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, probably. I don't know when he officially stopped making music or working. Probably never did. Probably still was at least advising folks.
Once he got in the 90s, he slowed down a little bit in the 90s. But that's from 1963 through the 90s. So you have 30 solid years there, and then years after that, still being a huge part of the music industry.
Yeah. No, it's really is. It's amazing the stories that coming out. One day they got to do. I'm sure they're gonna do a biopic on Quincy Jones's life. But you got to find the right person. But his life is worthy of a biopic. And then the cool thing about a biopic about Quincy Jones's life is all the people that he interacted with. So you got to find the reason that the movie would be hard to do is not because you would have to find the cool Quincy Jones character to play him, but you got to find all the other stars that he aligned himself with and all the other celebrities and icons that he interacted with. And you got to get celebrities to play them, and they got to be, convincing.
Not awful,
right? You got to be Michael Jackson's got to be convincing. Your Michael Jackson you can't have the cool Quincy Jones and then just pick anybody to play Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
he interacted with Michael a lot. That's a big part of his iconic life or his iconic work in productions. So you got to make sure your Michael Jackson's on point, and you got to make sure that all the other great artists that he come in contact with that people know as iconic, that you actually nail them too.
Yeah,
that's why it would be tough.
It'd be tough, but they'll do it. Someone will do it.
Somebody will do it. Will they do it right?
That's always the question.
Somebody will do it. They've done Tupac and Biggie. Did they do them right? I'm not sure they did them right. They did them. Hey, you're right. Somebody's going to do it because there's money in it. But if you're going to do it right, you need to make sure you get the casting down for sure. Okay. Thanks to Patrick for hooking us up with the new theme Thursday. He also hooks us up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll of the day today. How many sacks will Florida get against Texas? We gave you 4 options: 0, 1-2, 3-4, or 5+. And right now, 1-2 is leading the way early in the voting, and then 3-4 getting some votes. But no one has gone 0 or 5+ yet. So see if we get the extremes put in there at any point. But everybody's in the middle.
They Longhorn fans aren't. Listen, they're not gullible and delusional. They know this offensive line is leaky. They got some issues on the O-line, but they also have some faith. That shows they got some faith that the coaches will figure it out.
Yeah,
and they still may give up some plays. The coach will figure it out. It won't be, the really pretty much the disaster in pass protection we've seen the last 2 weeks. It won't be that 11 sacks in the last 2 weeks. So I'm with you. I think 1-2. I said 2. But 1 would be great. 0 would be amazing. But 1-2, that's realistic. And 1, like I said, considering you've given up 11 in the last 2 weeks, 1 actually would be, I think, impressive. That definitely would be improvement. Even 2 would be technically improvement, but not as much as you'd like. All right, so there you go. Topic for the big fat poll today. Go check it out at the Horn ATX on X. We'll talk about NFL action tonight, actually, because you got Thursday night football, division game happening between the Ravens and the Bengals. I mean, it's a big game for the Bengals because the Bengals are right below 500. If they want to keep their postseason hopes alive, and especially considering where they are in that division, looking up in that division, this is a must-win game, it feels like, for the Bengals. I'm not sure T. Higgins is available for him. He's dealing with an injury, so may not have T. Higgins available. But what people may not know is Joe Burrow's been balling. We talked about this yesterday. Joe Burrow's killing it right now. Joe Burrow is playing at a really, really high level. I don't even know how the Bengals are so bad. I haven't watched the Bengals all season, so I'll admit that I don't know why they're bad. But guys, I told you this yesterday. Jamar Chase is second in receiving yards and first in receiving touchdowns. Joe Burrow is fifth in passing yards, third in passer rating, and second in QBR. He's second in passing touchdowns. He's only got 4 interceptions on the season. And Trey Hendrickson is leading the NFL in sacks with 11. The defense is a top 10 scoring defense. How are the Bengals?
And they started off really poorly. So they lost. They went 0-3 to start the season. They're 4-2 since.
But so my point is, like, how did it happen? Because they look at all their stars are thriving. That's what my point is. Like, how did they get in the hole? Like, how did you get in the hole so bad?
Yeah,
I know the 0-3. How did the 0-3 happen though? Like, how did it? Because their stars didn't. It's not like Joe Burrow started out and he was just throwing a lot of picks and had a disastrous performance. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know how. They just weren't able to move the ball. I think there was some where they thought they weren't going to miss Mixon as much as they did, and they just didn't have a running game.
Yeah, maybe
and
that's it.
So that kind of figuring that out of not being able to, they were having 3 and outs because they run the ball for a yard and then have to throw it out of that and getting wrong and getting third and longs. And I think they figured out some of their problems, but early on it cost them.
Yeah, no, maybe you're right about that. Because I'm talking like they don't have a lot of like glaring weaknesses, and maybe you're right. Maybe it's the run game. Matter of fact, yeah, their run game it's like the 6th worst run game in the league right now. So maybe you're right about them not figuring out the run game, but still shouldn't be 4-5 right now, somewhere around there.
Yeah, they're 4-5. They started out 0-3.
They still should be better than that.
Yeah, the 0-3 start is what has killed them. They're 4-2 since, which is not terrible. And one of those is that Baltimore game that was, it was an overtime game. So if they win that one, they're 5-4, and they're tied with the Ravens.
We'll get into it. Yeah, but it's that should be a great game. Actually, that division is full of just. Whether you're talking about the Steelers or you're talking about the Bengals, you're talking about the Ravens. I know the Browns are pretty much out of it, but man, there are going to be some straight up slobber knockers in that division just because you got a lot of 3 teams that I think are playoff caliber teams. Not all of them are going to make the playoffs, but that's what the Bengals are trying to keep alive, those hopes right now for them. All right, we'll get to that in just a second. Also, we'll talk about the Texans a little bit too, and we'll get into their matchup versus the Detroit Lions. We'll get into that coming up. And, of course, the news about Dak Prescott. Looks like Dak Prescott is going to be done at least for 4 weeks, I think anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, according to Jane Slater. That hamstring injury for Dak is much worse than anticipated. It is being described as a partial avulsion of his hamstring tendon, which is partially torn off the bone. So, yeah, she said typically it takes more than a 4-week recovery. That would lean you toward 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in there. And then you start thinking about where the Cowboys are going to be in 4 to 6 weeks. I haven't looked at the schedule, but like I said, they're not beating the Eagles. I don't think they're going to beat, when they play the Commanders, not going to beat the Commanders. They're not going to beat the Texans in those 4 weeks. So now you're talking about 3 more losses, and 3 more losses will, I think, depending on, exactly what happens on the NFC, but I think it'll put you out of it. And out of your wild card hopes will be dashed if you're the Cowboys too. So a lot of conversation about the Cowboys and what they're going to do. And we'll get back to, of course, Texas football conversation as well. All right, let's dive into, before we get into that, let's get to our Horn headlines first. Don't want to miss those, and then we'll come back and talk about the Thursday night football game tonight, and then we'll start to preview the Texans and their matchup coming up versus Detroit. But first, let's get updated, let's get educated, let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Rockets handled the Spurs 127-100 with Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet scoring 21 each in the game. The Rockets led by 25 at halftime and kept pace in the second half to the easy victory. The Mavericks picked up a 119-99 win over the Bulls, with Luka Doncic putting up 27 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Timberwolves in San Antonio. In the NFL, the Bengals head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. The two teams played in an overtime thriller a month ago that the Ravens won 41-38. The 4-5 Bengals need to win to stay in the playoff hunt and the chase for the AFC North title. And that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Appreciate those. Tonight, the game between the Bengals and the Ravens, it should be a really competitive game. I still think right now it's amazing that Lamar Jackson is having a better start to this season than he did last season. And he won the MVP last year. And he is right now the front runner right now to win the MVP this year. It would be remarkable. It'd be amazing if that was indeed the case. He has how about this stat? Players with 20 plus passing touchdowns and a 120 plus passer rating in the first 9 games of the season, and he's in this rarefied group. The last players to do it was 2018. Drew Brees did it, and he finished second in the MVP voting. In 2014, Aaron Rodgers did it, and he won the MVP. 2013, Peyton Manning did it, and he won the MVP. Aaron Rodgers did it in 2011, won the MVP. 2007, Tom Brady did it, won MVP. 2004, Peyton Manning did it and won the MVP. It's right now he's trending toward another MVP, which would just be, like I said, that'd be unbelievable for him, as young as he is, under 30, not even 30 years old, to have won 3 MVPs if he indeed wins it. And honestly, the biggest help to him and really the biggest boost for him so far is just adding Derrick Henry to the mix. Both of these guys have really revitalized their skill set, and not that Lamar Jackson needed it because he's already was the reigning MVP, but even that's why he's even playing better as a result of them adding Derrick Henry to the mix. And Derrick Henry right now is leading the NFL in every major category for a running back in rushing and rushing attempts. And if you go look at it, they have changed the offense for Derrick Henry in a very smart way. Because he's a downhill runner, right? You got to get that big, you got to get that big engine moving downhill so that he can be a punishing runner. And once you get him going downhill, that speed, that size, that is just not going to work out well for the defense or any defender. So they've gone under center. That's how you get a running back going downhill. Hard to get him going downhill out of the shotgun. You can do it out of the pistol, but a pistol is not. That's the compromise between under center and the shotgun. So they've actually gone under center more. The Ravens have. Their shotgun rate has decreased. Last year, that shotgun rate, here's the last 4 years. Actually, let's go back to 2019. The shotgun rate for the Baltimore Ravens, if you go look at overall, 93%, 95%, 94%, 87%, 83%. This year, 69%. Nice. So they've actually gone with shotgun less, and they've gone under center a lot more. And under center, they're third in yards per play. They're second in EPA per play. Their success rate, they're third. Explosive plays, they're fifth. EPA per run, they're third. EPA per pass, they're third. They're basically a top 5 offense when they're under center. And that allows them to get downhill with Derrick Henry in that run game. And it really has changed that offense. And it makes them an even more difficult team to have to deal with. And in addition to that, it's made Lamar Jackson a better passer. He is actually a better passer now with this modified spread offense that now has him under center and in pistol a lot more, just more variations, not just all in shotgun. You go look at it, he got the highest passer rating right now for anybody in the league. And he actually right now currently has the 4th highest passer rating in NFL history. And if he continues, he'll be fourth behind Aaron Rodgers, 2011, which was a 122.5. Aaron Rodgers in 2020, which was a 121.5. Peyton Manning in 2004, which was a 121.1 passer rating. All those previous quarterbacks I mentioned or years I mentioned, that quarterback won MVP. And then you have Lamar Jackson in 2024, 120.7. It's actually, like I said, it's the way they've modified the offense. It's helped him too. And right now that you can make the argument that may be the best offense in the league if you want to make that argument. And they're still missing elements. They're still missing some elements in the passing game. I think their tight ends are sound. They got two of the best tight ends in the league. That's why they traded for Deontay Johnson. They're still not sure that they have the wideouts on the outside that can win consistently. But man, that running game is unbelievable. It is legit. And you might have like I said, you might have the offensive player of the year and the MVP on the same team or in the same backfield, which that doesn't happen all the time, but that's, I think, the way the Ravens are trending right now. Freaky. Derrick Henry, when he faces 8 defenders in the box now, he has the most attempts with 8 defenders in the box because you're going up against him and Lamar Jackson. You're going up against the most explosive, elusive dual threat quarterback in NFL history, and then you got one of the most unique running backs and downhill punishing runners in NFL history. So people are stacking the box against them. When they face 8 defenders in the box, Derrick Henry, first in rushing yards with 573, first in touchdowns. He's got 10. He's got the most explosive runs, 10-plus yard runs, 11. And he's got 22 forced missed tackles. All of those numbers are the best in the NFL for any running back facing 8 guys in the box. And he's already got over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. It's him. I want to say it's Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, and Saquon Barkley are the only players who already have over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. That is, I'm telling you, it's next level freaky what's going on with the Ravens offense. I will say the Ravens defense, though, leaves a lot to be desired. That's the problem right now going with the Ravens. It's not the offense. The offense is clicking and it's great. The Ravens defense actually has been surprisingly leaky. They allowed over 21% of the plays against them to gain 10 or more yards. That's 22nd in the NFL. And they allowed damn near 8% of the plays against them to gain 20-plus yards. That's 30th in the NFL. They give up a lot of big plays. And you're going up against Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow, this is how explosive the Bengals offense has been. We just talked about it. They don't even really have a running game. Running game is 6th worst in the NFL. And if I told you last week that Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdowns in the game, you'd be like, "Ooh, I bet Jamar Chase cleaned up." Nope. Jamar Chase was he caught 7 of 11 targets for 43 yards. That was it. And Joe Burrow went off and had 5 touchdowns. They've been doing a great job getting it to that tight end, Gesicki. He's been doing a good job. But no, you would have thought, oh, man, Jamar Chase. Now, Jamar Chase is, like I said, one of the league leaders in receiving. He's leading the NFL in receiving touchdowns. He's second in receiving yards. So he's getting his. I'm not saying he's not. But against the Raiders, when Joe Burrow went off, 5 touchdown performance, you'd have thought, oh, man, I bet 5 touchdowns, 1 reception. You thought Jamar Chase was getting a lot of that work. Nope. Just 7 receptions, 43 yards. But Gesicki had over 100 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown had a touchdown. Drew Sample had a touchdown. I don't even know. Losivas had a touchdown. Joe Burrow's just out there dealing. It doesn't matter who he's throwing to. And he may not have T. Higgins in this game because he is dealing with an injury. He'll have Jamar Chase, of course, but man, Joe Burrow's playing some of the best football we've seen him play. So this could end up being just a straight up shootout because I don't know if I know the Bengals defense is good. It's a top 10 scoring defense. I think they're like 7th in scoring defense, somewhere around there. So it's a good defense. And Trey Hendrickson leading the NFL in sacks. They got some players, but I still don't think they're going to be stopping that Ravens offense. I think that Ravens offense will be able to score a lot of points. I don't know if that Ravens defense is going to be able to stop Joe Burrow consistently all night either. So I think Joe Burrow is going to be able to move the football even without T. Higgins there. Problem is they're going to be one-dimensional, and then because they can't run the ball really effectively. But even against the Ravens, I think that's the way to beat the Ravens.
Yeah,
To throw the football against
they're
them.
32nd in pass defense.
Yeah, you throw it.
You throw the ball at them, and so that was Joe Burrow had 392 yards and 5 touchdowns in the last time they played. So if you look at it that way, that's kind of the way you have to just go at it and say this is going to be a shootout, and hopefully we're on the right side of it. Hopefully we have the ball last and we can score last, or hopefully if we get to overtime, we can go ahead and score in overtime. But yeah, that 38-41 is a high scoring game, and especially because there was 3 points in overtime. So it was 38-38 going into overtime. The last time these two teams played, but this is a perfect game for Joe Burrow to go and light it up against a Baltimore secondary that's just really, really weak this year. And if you're the Ravens, you just got to try and control the clock and not give them the ball back, which is sometimes hard because Derrick Henry will run for 40, 50 yards at a time. And, you just got to score.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. They should play ball control. I think that might be the strategy. It probably should be the strategy for Baltimore. And they traded for Tre'Davious White, the cornerback.
Yes.
Not sure what his timeline is. I don't know if he'll play this game. They traded for him because of what you just talked about. Their pass defense, it's been bad all season long. And they just haven't been able to figure out why their pass defense is just so it's pitiful.
Yeah, the rumor was that they were in on the Marshawn Lattimore talks as well, and they just weren't able to get it done. Yeah. So then they ended up with Tre'Davious White, which I mean, they gave up basically nothing for him, but he's also not been playing, stellar football in the last couple of years. So it's not like they picked up a guy who automatically fixes your problem, but it's something to add in because they were basically trying to find anybody to add into that cornerback room at the deadline because they're just trying to figure out anything at this point.
Yep. No, it isn't. It's troubling because the team that you are assembling this roster to beat, which is Kansas City, and the Derrick Henry move was a great move, but they just brought in a number one wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, and their passing game now is what's starting to flourish. And that's a bad matchup for Baltimore right now, just because of how bad their pass defense is. And you know what? Honestly, any good quarterback they face against is a bad matchup for Baltimore. They face a good quarterback with some weapons. It's a bad matchup because right now their pass defense is not just one of the worst, as Patrick said, it's the worst statistically in the league. And they give up chunk yardage plays too, like 20-plus yard, 15-plus yard plays through the air. Against Joe Burrow, that's going to be a problem. So I'll take Baltimore in this game, but I think it could end up being a game that comes down to a game-winning drive, game-winning field goal, could even go to overtime, and it could go either way. It's just like the last game, in week 5 between these two teams. All right, let's get to the Texans. We'll preview the Texans and the Lions matchup a little bit coming up next in Rod's Rant. We'll also look at the Dallas Cowboys and their matchup coming up versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll talk about this team, which may have the best offense in the league. We talked about how good that Ravens offense is. This offense may be better than that Ravens offense. We'll discuss it. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Low and Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Texans talk. Texans facing Detroit this weekend, so be a great measuring stick for the Texans. Try to figure out where they are because right now the Detroit Lions playing some of the best football, if not the best football right now in the NFL. Kansas City's undefeated, so maybe them in Kansas City, but right now the Detroit Lions are at the top of their game. They look like they're going to be the team to beat in the NFC. I'll give you, and this is actually it's sad news because I think we were robbed of an elite all time great season potentially by this young man. But I'm happy the Texans don't have to face him. Aiden Hutchinson, when he got hurt, he was leading the NFL in sacks. Right, he had like 7.5. He got hurt getting a sack. Like he was actually bringing down Dak. I think when he got hurt, right, it was on a sack.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
With his ankle pointed one way and
yeah, he
his
still
leg
got
the
the. He's
other.
like, I gotta get. I'm gonna get this sack though.
Yeah.
He still got a sack, and he was leading the NFL at the time. Guys, here's a stat for you. Aiden Hutchinson got hurt. What was it 3 weeks ago? Whatever it was, 3-4 weeks ago. He's still tied for the NFL leading pressures.
This guy's a beast.
Jonathan Grenard also is the other that's tied, former Texan, ironically. But isn't that crazy? Dude, think about what kind of pace he was on. That is unbelievable. So that's sad. But for the Texan, they don't need to see a dude that was playing at that kind of level. No, he'd have set some kind of record against the Texans. I guarantee you, with how bad the Texans' pass protection has been lately. And I'll give you the numbers because we talked about this last week and we talked about it earlier this week. CJ Stroud, yeah, the most pressured QB in the NFL this season so far. He's faced the 17th most pressures of any quarterback in the first 9 weeks of a season since 2000. That's unfortunate, and I hate this stat too because this stat says a lot about the offensive line and the coaching or lack thereof, lack of communication. The Texans have allowed the most unblocked pressures in the NFL per Pro Football Focus too. 50 unblocked pressures. That means defenders with a free shot on your QB. And that's why you see CJ Stroud just abandon the pocket sometimes. He's like, I'm just out. I'm scrambling. It's scramble drill. And, we'll live to fight another day or we'll extend this play. And man, and the Texans, like I said, it'd be different if it was, one problem or a concept or one player on the O-line that was underachieving. Now you may look at Kenyon Green and you say, oh man, he's the biggest problem. That he may be the biggest liability on the O-line, but he ain't the only one. Your two tackles aren't playing really well right now. Laremy Tunsil is the most penalized offensive lineman in the NFL. He's undisciplined, and he got whipped last game. Titus Howard got whipped last game. We talked about that. Right? So if you've allowed the 3 highest rates of pressure on CJ Stroud in his career in the last 3 weeks. And so you've allowed the most interior sacks, I believe, on the interior offensive line as well. So your interior offensive line is underachieving, and your tackles are supposed to be your bookend tackles, are supposed to be your, these guys are your foundational pieces to build that O-line around. Those guys have been struggling. The interior offensive line, I kind of expected, I don't know if I expected them, but I'm not surprised they were struggling. It is a surprise when, you're supposed to be all-world tackle and you're all-pro tackle when that guy's struggling too. So for the Texans, they got issues. Most sacks and most pressures allowed on the interior offensive line, and your bookend tackles aren't playing at a really high level either, including one of them being the most undisciplined left tackle, the most undisciplined offensive lineman actually in the NFL. So what do they do? Like, what's the solution here? Well, hopefully they get Nico Collins back. Now, Nico Collins is not going to solve all their problems, but, the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, and Riri Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size butt is he will mask some of them. He won't solve all your problems, but he will do a good job of helping you mask some of your issues. And what I mean by that is he'll just make CJ Stroud more comfortable and CJ Stroud more efficient and effective. And that's half your issues right now. Half your battle is, CJ Stroud. Remember the save, my save us CJ take that that part of these Bobby Slowick's problem is that he is overly reliant on the save me CJ offense that do whatever on first down, second down. Let's try to get, in a reasonable situation for third down. And then you end up in third and long, which Texas were in way too much. And in that third and long situation, that's when, they resort to the save me CJ model. Just go out there and save us, CJ. And he would, by the way, because he fantastic. But now without Nico Collins and without Stephon Diggs, harder for the save me CJ recipe to work. You don't have all the ingredients you need. Now, maybe you get one of those ingredients back with Nico Collins, who, when he was hurt, was the best receiver in the league, leading the NFL in receiving. So CJ Stroud, he has faced the second most quick pressures. That's, I think, basically pressure in under 2.5 seconds. Of course, because they're unblocked. You got the most unblocked. It's not a coincidence, and I think they are connected, right? That you have the most unblocked pressures in the NFL, and you have the most second most quick pressures in the NFL. They're connected. So second most quick pressures, the most unblocked pressures. The average second to pressure, average time to pressure for the Texans is 2.53 seconds. That's the 9th fastest in the NFL. All these things are a problem. But when you add Nico Collins to the mix, Nico Collins with CJ Stroud, right? So targets from CJ Stroud to Nico Collins while under pressure, 80% completion percentage, 19.4 yards per attempt. When CJ Stroud is targeting anybody else under pressure, 52% completion percentage, 6.3 yards per attempt. He needs his guy. He's looking for his guy. When they get to save me CJ mode, he's looking for his guy. Now, they shouldn't be in save me CJ mode as much because Joe Mixon is playing so well. Joe Mixon is guaranteeing you 100 yards when he starts. If Joe Mixon starts, you're going to get 100 on the ground. He's playing really, really well right now. So you shouldn't be in as many save me CJ mode in moments, but when you are, he looks for Nico. He looks for Nico on third downs, that includes your third and long. He looks for Nico in the red zone. When he's got to have it, he looks for Freako Nico. And I don't know if you get Nico back this week. He didn't practice, so I'm not sure. So I'm not, like I said, it's not going to solve your pass protection issues. Nope, not saying Nico is going to do that. But he's going to mask some of your pass protection issues. He's going to make the save me CJ formula work, or at least the recipe, it works a lot better when you add the ingredient of Freako Nico. That's in a nutshell. So if you get him back, you work. Now you got something to work with. If you don't, man, it's possible you could get mollywopped in this game by the Detroit Lions. I think they're going to lose regardless, but they could end up getting embarrassed.
No, and
Detroit likes to embarrass people.
And you could have the worst case scenario, which is always CJ just getting beat up too much. And knock on wood when they say that, but it is, when you just let free shots at your quarterback because you send 4 guys to block 3 and the running back runs behind the 4 guys blocking 3. I just, the amount of times you see that over and over again, the running back blocking has been awful. He just picks whoever it is, picks the wrong side of the field too many times where doesn't see where the pressure is coming from. And then the offensive lineman doesn't seem like there's any communication. They'll double team somebody and let somebody else run free. Like, you can't do that. Yeah, it's just, I get you. You're worried about him, but you should make sure that no one gets a free run.
Not a free run. Put a hand in, put a hand on them, booty bump them, hip check them, do something.
Because it's, the ones where they rush, 5 and it's one-on-ones and you let somebody go through because they just beat you one-on-one. Those are annoying. Those are annoying, right?
But they happen.
When they blitz, when they rush 3 and they get to the quarterback.
Yeah, that's inexcusable.
You say, what went wrong? You go, well, we stopped those other 2 really well. That doesn't matter.
Agreed. Yeah, when you outnumber them, those are the embarrassing ones. It's so you had 5 to block there, 2. At 3, and you let them through.
And the amount of times that rushing 4 with a running back in pass pro, and they basically get a free guy rushing 4. It's crazy.
was because of twist. They run twists and stunts, which is also something Texans have
Yeah.
struggled with. They rush 3 or 4. You got 5 or 6 in the block. They're 3 or 4, and you're like, oh, well, you definitely you're gonna have all day to throw the football, and yet a guy ends up coming free. You're like, how'd that happen when you have the numbers advantage? They ran a twist or a stunt, and then that confused the blocking scheme, and somebody didn't communicate, or somebody missed their blocking assignment and didn't pick up the free rusher. That's also a big part of this too.
Yeah, exactly. Which I get happens, but the amount that it happens.
Oh yeah, it happens a lot. It happens more to the Texans than it does to any other team in the league.
Yes,
and that's part of the problem. So that to me is, and John McClain actually said earlier this week, he was a controversial tweet. I might still be up there, that he thinks that he's predicting that CJ Stroud's going to end up getting hurt. If the Texans don't fix the issues, and I was like, yeah, it's a grim take, but it's rooted in reality. If you can't keep getting free shots on your quarterback, guys, something's going to happen. Something bad is going to happen if they keep getting free shots on CJ Stroud. All right, so I agree with John. I'm not. So I guess people didn't want him to speak it out loud, but we're all thinking it. You're all thinking it like, man, they better. Yeah.
Well, no, because we're trying to. I know, and I know that the Texans know it, but you just want to shout at them. You do get right that your meal ticket. You're letting them just take it.
Free shots at him. Come on now, got him running for his life out there.
Yeah, and then they're gonna be upset when CJ Stroud gets some bad Christmas gifts.
Yeah, the O-line. That's a good point. He's supposed to hook his O-line up. You still got to hook the O-line up, but man, they definitely not gonna get those Rolexes that they were gonna get before,
get
whatever that.
The Casio watches or whatever.
Seriously,
y'all got some swatches.
Oh man, but yeah, like I said, I hope that the Texans fix their issues, but right now the Texans have arguably the worst, or one of the worst, pass protection units in the NFL. So it's like we're dealing with this with the Texans and the Longhorns. I got this issue that both of my teams that I follow can't protect their starting quarterback.
Yeah,
it's
rough.
I don't like this, man. Don't like it at all. So we'll talk about the Texans, but honestly, the Detroit Lions is probably. I think they're gonna win. If I'm making a pick, I hope the Texans show up. But if you don't, Nico Collins is not practicing today. Oh, sorry, yesterday. He's got to practice. If he doesn't practice today, he's not gonna play.
Yeah,
there's no way. He's not coming off an injury, and him not getting more than a day of practice, because Friday is not even a real practice. Your meat of your practices are, your Wednesday, Thursday, if you're installed and everything. If he doesn't practice today, I'd say it's highly unlikely he ends up playing that game. And if he doesn't play, I just gave you the numbers. You're not going to stand a chance really against this Detroit Lions team, because they are right now, like I said, they are playing like they're playing the best football of any team in the league. I don't know if they're the best team. That's Kansas City. I wouldn't pick against Kansas City, but I don't know if anybody's playing a better brand of football right now than the Detroit Lions. They're trying to embarrass folks too. I try to embarrass folks. I will say this about Joe Mixon, though. Joe Mixon has been your saving grace. Joe Mixon, over the past 3 weeks, 263 yards after contact, first in the NFL. 4 rushing touchdowns, that's tied for first. 16 rushing first downs, tied for first. 18 forced missed tackles, that's second. And 12 explosive runs of 10-plus yards, that is tied for first. He has been, the last 3 weeks, in the conversation as one of the best, most productive running backs in the league in the last 3 weeks. Man, if you can just get that type of production with Nico Collins added back into the mix, man, then you're cooking with chicken grease. That offense would really be formidable. And Tank Dell, I think he had a really good game last game. Hopefully that's the case in this game. So, but for CJ Stroud, I just think the way the offensive line's blocking, that's not something you really get fixed, in 1 week or with some extra time. So that's a project for the Texans. They got to get that fixed before the playoffs, or before they hit this stretch of games late in the season against these high-level teams. Nobody in that division is going to challenge them, so no need to really worry about that. But they do got to be fixed. You ain't going to be able to beat the best teams in the AFC when you are the worst pass blocking team in the AFC potentially. All right, there you go. So that's the Texans versus the Detroit Lions. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up because I want to talk about the Texans defense versus that Lions offense. Jared Goff, guys, is right now playing at an elite level. I'll give you some of those numbers about Jared Goff in the last, I think it's the last 6 weeks of the season, last 6 games. He has been otherworldly in his production and efficiency. We'll talk about that coming up later on. We'll also get back to the Cowboys conversation. Dak Prescott, his hamstring injury reportedly a lot worse than folks anticipated. We'll talk about that too, and we'll get back to some Texas football conversation. But on the other side, what the facts, what the stats, right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to what the facts, what the stats. Got a bunch of factoids to share with you here. Okay, how about this one? Bryce Young. Remember everybody kind of giving up on Bryce Young. Everybody assumed, oh, he's a bust. He's done. We give up on quarterbacks way too easily these days and way too soon these days. Bryce Young, this past week, he had a higher passer rating than Jordan Love, C.J. Stroud, than Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, or Jameis Winston. How about that? And he has been named the starting quarterback for their game in Germany versus the Giants. Also saw that Jonathan Brooks, right? He's going to be
Brooks
activated.
Is it supposed to be activated? Yeah. And and also cost Dennis Allen his job.
Hold on, what?
Bryce Young cost Dennis Allen his job.
Oh, yeah. That's a great. I didn't think I was like, what? Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
You're right about that. Yeah, because I think that loss, you ain't supposed to lose to the Panthers.
No, by the way, Brian Daboll, you are on notice.
Yeah, that is true. Man, I think he's a good coach too.
I do, Jones. but yeah, he's in a bad place because if he goes to Germany,
you're right,
and the Panthers beat him.
Yeah, ain't gonna be good. That ain't gonna be good. You're right. No, I agree with you. That's you got to figure so. You got to find a way to beat the Panthers. That's a bad team, man. You can't have the Panthers beat you, because then your boss is gonna want he's gonna want to know what happened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. By the way, do you know the Panthers have 2 wins? Do you know the other team they beat?
Panthers 2 wins. Oh, I should know.
I'll give you a hint. They fired their offensive coordinator because they lost to the Panthers.
The Raiders?
The Raiders.
Wow.
So the Panthers are coach killers, man. They are coach killers. Man,
that is a trend, huh?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's not good. That's not good at all.
No, you don't want to be a coach on the hot seat playing the Panthers.
Yeah, I love those kind of trends. That's crazy. Oh, yeah, we got to keep up with that. I love that. Yeah, so what the facts, what the stats. That's perfect. Also, since we're talking about what the facts, what the stats, do you realize that the opponents of the Detroit Lions, I believe, and I got to go check and see if it happened this week, last week, but they were all had that Detroit Lions hangover. They were all winless after playing the Detroit Lions. Remember, that was the case for San Fran a couple of years ago, where they were so physical that it didn't matter if you won or lost versus San Fran. The hangover effect, you were going to lose the next week. Seems like Detroit is that team.
Makes sense.
Now.
And Campbell's got that team playing the way he wants
them
to.
Yeah, that's the kind of physical play that they have where there's a hangover effect when you play that team. All right, good stuff there. How about this factoid? I threw this one out there. Well, actually, I haven't thrown this one out there, but I might as well. Texas defense. If you look at defensive yards per play, the team leaders through 10 weeks of the college football season, Texas 3.6 yards per play allowed is the best in college football. Second, guys, is 4.43 with Indiana. So nobody's even close to this Texas defense in terms of yards per play allowed. Yards per play team leaders allowed. They're at 3.6. The second best in the country is at 4.4. That is a significant difference. So that's how well that Texas defense is playing right now at an elite level. Actually, Pro Football Focus has them as the highest graded defense in the Power 4. Have them as a 94.6 overall grade. As they're the highest graded defense in the Power 4. They're first, I believe, in total defense, first in passing defense. They're number 2 in scoring defense. And they're 16th best rush defense. Not really sure the Texas defense has a weakness, or at least none that the opposing teams have figured out yet. And we're pretty deep into the season. I think every team's weakness has been exposed. If you haven't seen a weakness by now, maybe that Texas defense just doesn't have one. All right, that's what the facts, what the stats for you. Got a couple of those. Oh, how about this one? This is a Cowboys related one. I meant to get this when we were talking about the Cowboys, but it's perfect for this segment too. So the Cowboys, to this point in the season, have scored only 171 points. This is the fewest amount of points through the first 8 games of any season in team history since 2018. Since 2018. So basically, before that, it was 2015. So the Cowboys' offense has been struggling, to say the least. And how about this one as what the facts, what the stats? We're going to keep the train rolling. Here's the last one that I'll give you, and then we'll hit the break here. So if you're looking at, I've been talking about the Detroit Lions playing, of course, the Texans, and they look like they're a juggernaut. Jared Goff is the only quarterback in the history of the Detroit Lions to win 3 straight games at Lambeau Field. It has never happened in the history of the franchise. He's the first one to do it.
Jared Goff setting records.
Jared Goff. He's the first quarterback. It makes sense too when you think about it. It's like, well, they've been inept for like 50, 60 years. So it makes sense. They didn't have a quarterback that, think about it, and all the great quarterbacks that the Packers have had. That Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, you're not gonna beat them at Lambeau 3 times in a row. No. But Jared Goff has done it. Who knew? All right, there you go. That's what the facts with the stats. We'll come back. We'll get into the availability report, the SEC availability report, the first one for this week, and talk about what Longhorns find themselves listed, as well as what Florida Gators find themselves listed there. We'll also dive into the Dak Prescott injury, the report from Jane Slater that it may be a lot more serious than anticipated. We'll dive into that too. Also, Texas, Florida preview. We'll start to do that and go behind the burnt orange curtain. Talk about that Texas defense versus that Florida offense and the Florida quarterback situation. There's some mystery there that may be advantageous to the Gators. We'll dive into that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday. Yes, it's usually probably thinking it's a television theme song Thursday. No, it's a new theme Thursday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, comes up with all the musically themed days of the week. But on a new theme Thursday, comes up with a creative idea to focus the theme around, and he didn't really have to come up with anything creative. It is just a tribute to a music icon, Quincy Jones, and so all of the featured songs are projects of Quincy Jones in some way, form, or fashion. And the theme song is Sanford and Son, also a Quincy Jones project.
Yes,
Beautiful.
Quincy Jones is the writer and producer of this
That's
one.
amazing.
It's called "The Street Beater." Was the actual name of the song.
That is crazy. Well, I mean, that's just it. So I mean, I want to know the story, like the little backstory behind it. Like,
I don't know. This is the stuff is when I was going through and looking at stuff, I was like, I'm going to play some stuff that I find interesting that he did. So we know some of the main stuff he did, but I had no idea that he did that song.
Fascinating. No, I'm with you. Like I said, it really is. He really did have a really diverse like connection and impact on music. It wasn't just in like one genre like it usually is for, but he was all over the place. So I love that. That's fantastic. All right, so appreciate Patrick expanding our horizons a little bit and with a tribute to the late great Quincy Jones, who passed away earlier this week at the age of 91. Also, Patrick does a great job coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day that is already posted for you at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll of the day today. How many sacks will Florida get against Texas? We gave you 4 options: 0, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and 5+. Right now, 1 to 2 leading the way with 55% of the vote. 32% of you say 3 to 4. 0 getting 10% of the vote. So some people saying this offensive line is going to fix it this week. And then probably about a person or two saying 5+.
Yeah, I don't know. 5+, like I said, if it's 5+, and then you'll be talking about what 16 something sacks, 16 or more sacks in the last 3 weeks. That would be full on panic. I mean, we're full on panic mode at that point. There's no way.
On the text line, we're getting mostly threes. Mostly threes on the text line.
3 is too high for me.
Three is too high for me, but that is mostly what we're getting on the text line is 3.
3 is too high for me. How often has Florida gotten 3 sacks in a game? I don't.
They've done it 4 times this season.
Okay.
Twice in SEC play.
Okay.
Yeah, they got 4 against Stanford, 5 against UCF and non-con, and then 3 against Tennessee and 3 against Mississippi State.
Yeah, Mississippi State doesn't shock me. Tennessee, even though Tennessee's offense has looked pretty fraudulent in SEC play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I kind of that's so. I still think 3 would be too many. I'm at 2, and that makes me a little anxious to throw out 2, depending on when they are in the game and how are they drive killers and really what concept the 2 come on. Like if they get 2 sacks and both of them are cornerback blitzes, I'm gonna lose my mind. Right? I'm gonna lose my mind. If they're both there, because that's it, right? It depends on how they come too, right? If it's we just talked about this with the Texans. If it's a 3-on-5, they rush 3 guys and they run a twist and they end up getting a sack. Like that's frustrating. Or if say both of the sacks are with Texas having a numbers advantage in the pass game, that would be a little frustrating. It depends on how they come. It's not like you're getting beat. Guys get beat. You get beat. I mean, trust me, I got beat before. Plenty of video out there of me getting beat. Sometimes you get beat in a one-on-one, it happens. But, when it's a concept that you've struggled with that ends up being like if it's the 2 sacks, both come on A-gap blitzes, I'm not going to like that. I'm not going to like that. If, those 3 sacks and they're all delayed rush blitzes, that will be upsetting. So to me, I guess I'll have to dive into how the sacks come. But I'm at 2, and 2, no matter what they are, I'll be fine with that. I won't be. I don't think that's alarming. But if they get to 3, that's somewhat concerning. We had 4, that's alarm bells. And we had 5, panic button.
No, and exactly, and I think that you're also looking at what yardage the downs come at.
Yes,
because we see it if it's on if it's a coverage sack on a first down, where it's just Quinn held the ball for too long. I don't like that. but that doesn't necessarily put me at, oh, the O-line really screwed it up. That's just,
Agreed.
okay, he held the ball for 6 seconds. What do you want? What do you want to do? I like you to be able to stop that, and I'd like Quinn to be able to move out of the way, but they held the ball for 6 seconds. They're going to be able to get home. They're a good enough defensive line to do
Quinn
that.
should throw that away too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. It's a coverage sack, and it's a Quinn should get the ball out. But yeah, if they're coming up and Quinn's running right away, and or he just doesn't see it coming and it's a free run at him, those are the ones where you really start to get on. This is in technique. This is coaching, and this is you guys not realizing where you need to be. Yep,
I totally agree. So context of the sacks, I think, are going to matter too. But like I said, if it's more than 3, I'm done with the context. I don't even need to know the context. Y'all leaky. Y'all too damn leaky.
Yeah.
If it's 3 or less, then I'm like, all right, let's look at exactly what happened here. The context of them. Is it a concept they're struggling with? Guys getting beat one-on-one. That's worth examining. But like I said, if it's more than that, then we're alarm bells. If we got more than 3 sacks after giving up 4 to Vandy, that to me is, and you had a bye week, by the way, as well, to try to fix some of those pass protection issues. That would be a problem, clearly. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it, actually. I think it should be the bounce back performance for the O-line. I want to see them versus an SEC with SEC athletes like Florida has, how that offensive line bounces back, and how they perform run game, but mostly in pass protection, I think is.
And let's put it this way. This is a great, a great chance for the O-line to be able to hold a team to 1 sack and then walk away feeling like, okay, we figured some things out. We're feeling a lot better because we did hold a team that got 2 against Georgia and 3 against Tennessee. We held them to 1. So there's a positive that you can get out of this if you do walk away and there's 1 sack. I think even 2, you're not necessarily killing yourself. But yeah, if you get 1, then you feel pretty good.
Oh, really good. Like I said, that would be obvious improvement. 2, I think there's improvement. But like I said, I don't know how much, but there's improvement. If you give up 3, I don't know how much improvement we've had. No. You give up 4, that I would say there has been no improvement at all. We may be talking about regression, especially after a bye week, if that's the case. So that's kind of how, like I said, we can look at them individually and look at the circumstances and the context, and we will, on Monday. But I think that's a reasonable expectation for this offensive line. And we don't know how much Texas is going to throw it. I think they're going to end up throwing it a lot, actually. I think they'll end up throwing it quite a bit early on because I don't know if they're run. I think a lot of those throws, as we saw in versus Vanderbilt, they'll just be extensions of the run game anyway. All right, there you go. Topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Go check it out at the Horn ATX on X. We'll get to the Horn headlines here, and then we'll come back and examine the availability report and see what Longhorns are listed, what it means, and the surprising news coming out of Florida about their miraculous quarterback recovery, because I don't know how that happened, but apparently it did. So we'll discuss that and also dive into Dak Prescott's injury, which turns out is going to be it's bad news. It's big news, and it's big bad news for the Cowboys. Before we do that, let's get updated, let's get educated, let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and those Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Rockets handled the Spurs 127-100 with Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet scoring 21 each in the game. The Rockets led by 25 at halftime and kept pace in the second half to the easy victory. The Mavericks picked up a 119-99 win over the Bulls with Luka Doncic putting up 27 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Timberwolves in San Antonio. And in the NFL, the Bengals head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. The two teams played in an overtime thriller a month ago that the Ravens won 41-38. The 4-5 Bengals need the win to stay in the playoff hunt and the chase for the AFC North title. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. We appreciate those. Let's get to this first availability report that came out yesterday for the Texas-Florida game, where all the SEC teams have theirs. As a matter of fact, I want to say Ole Miss, once again, I want to say they got like 26 players on their injury report. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Lane Kiffin put like 26. Yeah, he got 26 players on it. He's got, I mean, it's crazy. So maybe he's got that many guys on, or maybe he's mocking it, or maybe he thinks it's ridiculous, but kind of Belichickian in his approach to it.
The amount of probables on there is insane.
It's insane. And something tells me with Lane Kiffin, he's mocking it more than anything. But anyway, for Texas,
11 people as probable.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's got to be mocking it at that point. It's like, come on, man. But like I said, Belichick had that philosophy in the NFL. It's like, no, if anybody's got a nick, I will, just inundate you, overwhelm you with the injury report. Then everybody's on the injury report then, because everybody's injured at this point. It's just all about the levels that they got to deal with. All right, let's speaking of the availability report, the injury report, let's talk about the Texas-Florida one. Because Florida's got a lot of guys on here too, and they're not doing it, I think, in a in a way to mock it like Lane Kiffin is. No, I think they just beat up after that Georgia game. First off, the guys that are out for them, DB Jakeem Jackson, DB Jason Marshall Jr. He's actually one of their top corners. Him being out is big. Eugene Wilson III, the wide receiver, he's out. That also is big. I think he's your best all-around receiver. He's been nicked up all year. He's out. Trayon Webb at running back, he's out. Graham Mertz, of course, the starting quarterback initially, he's going to be out. He has been out, and that's why DJ Lagway was playing in the game versus Georgia, who we'll get back to. Asa Turner, another DB, he's out. Khalil Jackson, a wide receiver, he's out. Devin Moore, defensive back, another DB, he's out. Guys, that's 4 DBs already that are out. That's a lot of DBs. Devin Manuel, he's an offensive lineman. He's out. Jamari Lyons, a defensive lineman. He's out. A lot of guys out for them, but only a few guys of consequence, of significance. I think the 2 most significant would be Jason Marshall Jr., the cornerback, and Eugene Wilson III, who decided to have season-ending surgery, so he's going to be out. You may be talking about their top corner and their top wide receiver, basically. Now, Eugene Wilson, he's been hurt all season long, so they've been, dealing with him being nicked up. But if you look just watching film, he's the guy. Like he's a dude, and he won't be available for him. Going to the questionable guys for Florida, Montrell Johnson Jr., he started out the season as their marquee bell cow running back. He's been dealing with some injuries. He was not available in the Georgia game because of injury concerns. But if he's questionable, something tells me he may end up getting upgraded that week. Could be a big game for him if he is available. That to me might give this Florida team the best depth in the backfield that Texas has faced in terms of depth at the running back position, because Montrell Johnson is one of the better running backs in the SEC, especially when he's healthy. Then they have Jaden Balls, another guy that's kind of taken over those duties. He's been in that committee of running backs, basically. Jaden Ball, and Jacoby Jackson. Jacoby Jackson's averaging 5.7 yards per carry, and Jaden Ball is averaging a little over 4.5 yards per rush. Montrell Johnson's averaging 5.3 yards per rush. That's a pretty formidable backfield if those guys are healthy. So if you go look at it for Florida, they're going to be over-reliant on the run game anyway, depending on what goes on with their quarterback situation, which we'll talk about. But that is something to look at. Montrell Johnson Jr., questionable at the running back position. Then there's DJ Lagway, which apparently DJ Lagway, he's listed as questionable on this report, but he practiced yesterday. That comes from Billy Napier, actually. Billy Napier said he practiced a little bit yesterday. That is remarkable. We'll come back and discuss why that is the case. But DJ Lagway listed as questionable. Elijah Badger, he's now, after Eugene Wilson, he's their best wide receiver. He's a transfer from Arizona State, if I'm not mistaken. Veteran guy. I believe he's a senior at this point. Explosive receiver. Has 4 receptions of 40-plus yards on the season. Only 4 players in the SEC have more receptions of 40-plus yards on the season. He's averaging over 23 yards per reception. Oh, man, he's a problem. And I believe he's got 24 receptions on the season, but averaging 23 yards per reception, and really took on a lot of the target share when Eugene Wilson went down. And so he's a guy to watch out for, but he's listed as questionable. Something tells me he's going to play, but that's another blow, a significant one to that Florida Gators offense. Dijon Johnson, a defensive back, another defensive back. He's listed as questionable here. And then you got Damian George Jr., an offensive lineman, listed as questionable. Cam Jackson, a defensive lineman, also listed as questionable. So to me, what stands out, of course, is DJ Lagway. And let's get right into it before we examine the Texas side of things. DJ Lagway in that game versus Georgia, he goes down with an injury. The injury seems to be so serious, in fact, that the entire team came off the sideline to console him and to support him and to comfort him. Usually when that happens, that dude at least ain't playing the next week. He's like, I don't know if his season ending, but it ain't good and he ain't playing this week. And then the cart came out. Then they carted him off the field. I'm like, well, carted him off the field. Players coming off the sideline to console him on the field. Long delay. All right. He's definitely not playing against Texas. Well, he wasn't ruled out earlier this week. Remember, Bill Napier's like, no, I'm not ruling him out. It's like, you're not ruling him out? What do you mean? He got carted off the field. You guys went out there and like prayed over him. You got carted off the field and being prayed over. Usually you don't play next. I cannot think of prayer does work now. Prayer does work. It does work. I'll show you on that. But yeah, usually, and I'm not mocking prayer. Trust me. Like I said, it does work. I'm a child of God. But usually when everybody comes out there and people are praying over you and they got to cart you off, how often have you seen that guy play the next week? How often? It just, I can't remember a time where you get the praying hands, you get the cart treatment, and everybody comes off the sideline to console you, and then you play next week. It usually does not happen.
No, that was the one I said I remember is the Astros had, and I found out who it was. It was Jake Odorizzi. And this is, I think, 2 years ago. He fields a ball or he goes to cover first base, whatever it is. He's coming off the mound, and he just hits the ground, face first, hits the ground. And you're like, oh no. And he's just laying on the ground, and he's down there, and the medical staff comes out, and everybody comes out, and they bring a stretcher out for him. They load him into the stretcher and secure him into the stretcher, and they wheel him off, and everybody's like, all right, man, good on you. And they're like, yeah, you sprained your calf. You'll be back in like a week and a half.
You'll be back in like a week and a half.
And he was like, I heard a pop, and I thought it was my Achilles, and I thought it was all this. Like, it was.
Yeah, bro, you strained.
Yeah, so that's where I remember it was a thing where he was really embarrassing because it happened, and then they had to come out with a report like 2 days later, like, he's fine. He'll be okay.
Oh, man. I told him to exaggerate. Be like, nah, man, you need to get a really, I want a really fancy medical diagnosis, all right? The terminology for what's going through. Do not just say strained calf. No, I need something else. I need you to throw a lot of other random terms on there so people will think it's really serious. But no, it's a good point. So my point, I'm sure there are exceptions to the rule, and that being one of them, but it's rare. Well, this may be one of those rare occasions because Billy Napier said that he practiced a little bit, and he's listed as questionable. And I don't know how with a hamstring injury that could be that severe that he could practice, but he is a physical freak. Like he's known for being one of the most freakish athletes in college football. So maybe he's got some Wolverine healing ability. It could just been greatly exaggerated. Could have been just grossly exaggerated by everybody, the team, the medical staff, and everybody involved. That could have been the case too. And maybe that is likely that was it. Even with just a minor hamstring injury, his ability to drive the football, his ability to throw it deep. I mean, those are things that are those mechanics are you use your base, your core, and of course your lower body as well. So I just wonder how effective he'll be because he does have a cannon of an arm. He's not that accurate, but he can chunk it deep. I just wonder if he'll have that ability to drive the football in that manner if the hamstring injury is hampering him. So, but Texas, it's a brilliant strategy because Texas does have to now they have to have two game plans. They have an Aiden Warner game plan and a DJ Lagway game plan, and they have to spend their limited practice time and meeting time preparing for both. That's why it's a good strategy for Billy Napier. I don't know if we'll see DJ Lagway in that game at all. But if he's practicing, you gotta account for him if you're Texas. But I almost think you'd rather see him out there just if he is limited in that way. At least as a DB, I know where there's certain throws he just can't make. Certain throws he just can't make if he's indeed hurt in that way, and you can judge that early on in the game if they decide to throw it, based on where he is on the field, what hash he's on, and that sort of thing. So I do wonder, maybe they got him out there because they think he still has the arm talent, and they don't need him as the dual threat, but as the arm talent, he can still threaten Texas vertically. I have no idea, but it's something now that Texas they got to consider. They can't disregard it.
You use your legs when you throw the ball.
You do.
Like that was the Dak Prescott we saw. It was the scramble where he heard it, and then it was the throw where he was like, "Okay, I can't even throw the ball. I thought I could throw the ball even if I was a little gimpy."
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. It doesn't seem like he could play. It seems like it's still gamesmanship, and his practice could have been that he was, just throwing the ball from his upper body and legs were stationary and he was not using his legs at all. And they're just trying to gamesmanship because they understand they're trying to figure out who this quarterback is, who's their third stringer. They're trying to figure out what plays could work. And so they go, okay, just throw anything at him. Just try and get any type of edge we can get. I don't blame it. Sark did it with Quinn twice.
Yeah, he did. Smart move.
So I get it. I'm not opposed to it. It feels like it has to be that. If that kid plays, I don't know how you can put a 19-year-old kid back out there after that injury and not worry.
Yeah, the training staff has to clear him. And I would be wondering, what would be like, how responsible is that to clear him if it was indeed a severe injury? It could just be that everybody overreacted.
Yeah.
And then that's what we're dealing with now, was because we saw the overreaction. And like I said, to me as a player, I was like, oh man, this is serious. I feel bad for the young man. I remember literally saying that. I was like, I feel bad for him. I was like, man, you don't want to see that.
But but the thing is even a normal hamstring is like 3 to 4 weeks.
It's still going to limit you in terms of your dual threat quarterback, your running ability.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be able to hit the
normal
edge
hamstring injury. That's why
on the number one defense in the country. By the way,
and are you just going to
defense? You're going to.
What are you going to do when you go? Okay, don't run. They're coming after you right now in the backfield. What are you going to do?
I would blitz him if he can't.
You're just going to fall over every time.
Yeah.
You're at 19 years old. You're going to be smart enough to every time you see it, instead of just naturally taking off, which is your natural inclination to run when someone's chasing you.
Naturally changing that direction, or
you're just going to go knee,
and then ripping it even more.
Yeah, just knee.
Yep. Like I said, I can't figure out which one it was. Overreaction, or
it seems like it's both. It seems like it's a little bit of both, but at the same part, I think it's gamesmanship. I think the good news is hopefully he'll be back this season.
Yeah.
That's I think the good news.
I'm with you. I think it's Aiden Warner. And this is just, like I said, this is just smart coaching if it is the case. But Aiden Warner, there's not a lot of film out on him. I don't know what the rules are, and maybe there are no rules about film and what you can get on the guy. Texas, I'm sure, has connections with the Yale staff. I'm sure somebody on that staff knows through degrees of separation somebody on that Yale staff. Maybe he's played in the game. If he has, maybe you can get that game film. Hell, maybe he's played in a scrimmage and they got that. Maybe you can get that game film. So they'll have a scouting report on Aiden Warner. But either way, that element of mystery is advantageous at the quarterback position to Florida. I don't know how long it lasts. It may last a drive. It may not last that long. But they do have a little bit of advantage with the mystery of that, because we just don't. Texas doesn't know. And they have to prepare for both. And even Sark said, we're preparing for the system now. But even the system will change depending on who is running the system. It's going to be very, very different. So Texas just will have to kind of go in and adjust on the fly, which I'm sure that the number one total defense and the number one pass defense, number 2 scoring defense, and number 16 rushing defense can figure it out. Because Texas, and we'll talk about that too. I don't know if we praise this Texas defense enough, because they haven't been tested thoroughly. Even Georgia, because Georgia's a fledgling offense as well. I just think both things can be true, that the Texas defense is as good as advertised. It is an elite defense, but they've had a pretty lucky draw of opponents so far. Even this week versus Florida, DJ Lagway's got a hamstring injury. They're going to be facing a third string walk-on transfer quarterback from Yale. Good luck with that. Right? It's just like they end up, I think, with very favorable matchups, but it's not like they don't rise to the occasion. So I mean, I hope the best quarterback they played was Carson Beck, supposedly, but he didn't play very well, and he's still not playing well. What has he got? 11 interceptions in the last 4 games, something like that. He's not playing well.
Yeah.
Diego Pavia might have played the best out of any quarterbacks that they played, and he wasn't spectacular or anything.
Yeah.
He just was gritty and found a way to improvise and he creates really well. He can play hero ball really well, but no quarterback has really been able to thrive really against Texas defense. And I don't know if I know that Aiden Warner won't do it, and they hamstrung DJ Lagway won't do it either. So that's something we'll talk about when we come back to. How good is this Texas defense? I'll give you some numbers about it, but then we'll look at it historically. About how good this Texas defense is. We'll do that. We'll also examine the Texas versus Florida matchup a little bit more. We'll talk about what the Texas defense obviously has to match up with all the losses that the Florida offense is dealing with. Potentially, no Eugene Wilson, but potentially no Elijah Badger, no Montrell Johnson, potentially. Both of those guys are questionable. So we talked about that, but we'll jump to the other side of this matchup and talk about that Texas offense versus the Florida defense. We'll dive into that a little bit too. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get back to some Texas football conversation. We didn't go over the Texas side of the injury report, so let's do that now. Then we'll open it up and discuss the Texas offense versus the Florida defense and get into the matchup a little bit. But we know Derek Williams, the safety, has been out, as well as C.J. Baxter and Christian Clark, the two running backs. They've been out for the season. Velton Gardner recently has been listed on the injury report a few weeks in a row, and the report now confirms he's going to be out for the season, and it's due to an eye injury that he sustained in practice, kind of a freaky eye injury of some kind. So the snake-bitten running back position continues to experience some bad luck. You got three running backs now out for the season, leaves you with three scholarship running backs with Trey Wisner, Jaden Blue, and Jerry Gibson. And then you can throw in Ryan Niblett, who they use in a hybrid role there. So maybe that gives you four running backs, but yeah, you can't afford any more injuries at the running back position. Knock on wood there. You got Vernon Broughton, who is going to be out for the first half. Remember, he had the targeting penalty in the second half of the Vanderbilt game, so he'll be out for the first half. That is important. We talked about that Florida offense, especially if they get Montrell Johnson, the running back, available, is questionable. If he can play in that game, that'll be one of the deepest backfields you play all season long, and one of the more talented backfields you'll play all season long. And they're going to be overly reliant on the running game. They're going to want to run the rock and pound the rock. You're going to need big bodies on that defensive line, on that defensive front. And Vernon Broughton has been one of your best and your most reliable. He's going to be out for the first half. If you're Florida, you got to take advantage of that. Which one of those young D tackles steps up in his stead while he's out in that first half to help them solidify that rotation? That'll be interesting to see who it is. Andrew Makuba listed here as questionable. Colton Vosick listed as questionable on the edge. But we expect, Andrew Makuba to probably be upgraded here because Sark said he's been practicing all week. Not sure what's going on with Colton Vosick. That didn't really hear anything about that, but we will keep our ears to the street. Isaiah Bond, remember, Sark said he also practiced this week, so he's listed as probable, and very likely he will be off of this injury report by the time the game starts. Now, will he be limited in action? Will he play? Will they just unleash him on Florida? That'll be interesting to see what Sark decides. They don't necessarily need Isaiah Bond in this game versus Florida, but the offense does need some juice. It needs some mojo. So I talked about them getting that mojo back. Maybe part of that mojo is adding that world-class elite speed that Isaiah Bond brings back, and maybe it opens up a lot more of the offense. Okay, so let's we'll get to the Florida. One thing that really stood out to me is we're talking about Isaiah Bond and the explosive element coming back to the offense. Didn't realize this, but Florida's defense have given up a lot of explosive plays. Now, we talked about all the DBs that are listed on the injury report for them. You got 4 DBs that are out, 5 DBs listed on the injury report. 4 of them are out. Only one of them is of consequence. That's Jason Marshall Jr. Jason Marshall Jr. is actually one of their top cornerbacks, and he's going to be out in that game. But they've allowed so far this year 33 20-plus yard passes through the air. That's a good for 111th. So they've given up some big chunk yards, some explosive plays in the air. Now, they're 68th in pass defense, which is not bad. I mean, that's right around average. They're 68th. They're actually below average in rush defense. They're 88th in rush defense. But, Texas doesn't have, an above average run game. I think their run game is just average. I really do. If you look at the metrics that help you track the run game, if you're just looking at how you can look at some of the more basic metrics, just like rushing yards per game and, yards per rush, you're average in those categories, right? You're 62nd and 59th. And if you go look at broken tackles per attempt, yards after contact per attempt, outside rushes, inside rushes, depending on those are more, back specific or personnel specific stats to tell you, hey, if this guy is good at breaking tackles or this guy's good after contact. But even if you're looking at yards before contact, that's just more of an offensive line stat. What kind of push you're getting in the offensive line. Texas is average. Like, they're not bad. They're not good, great, or elite there. They're just average. But keep in mind, the last couple of years, they were elite in those categories because they had Jonathan Brooks and had Bijan and Rojo before that. So for Sark, this is unfamiliar territory. Remember, we talked about it. Sark's probably not going to have his 1,000-yard rusher this year. He's had a 1,000-yard rusher, every year he's been a head coach / play caller for the last, 9 years or so. He's had a 1,000-yard rusher to depend on, and he's not going to have that this season. And I think you could play into Florida's hands potentially if Texas wants to run the football against Florida with those light boxes, and maybe they drop their safeties back. And if Texas can't gain sufficient yardage early on down, so they put themselves behind the chains against Florida, put yourselves behind the chains against Florida, it's exactly what they want. 2nd and long, 3rd and long. If Florida gets that situation, then they can start using and deploying some of those those pressure packages and some of those pass rushing concepts and those blitz concepts that we've seen used so effectively versus Vanderbilt, and that we saw Georgia use very effectively, and that Texas has struggled with. And you want to stay out of those predictable passing situations. And so I think for Sark, in order to stay out of that, I think he maybe doesn't trust the running game fully yet. He uses extensions of the running game, the attached screens on the outside, the quick passing game, the swing screens, the check downs. Those are extensions of the running game. Those are just long handoffs. So either way, they take the Vanderbilt approach and take their safeties and plan them deep to try to negate any deep passes or explosive passes for Texas. Texas can still beat them with the underneath throws, and this number does not bode well for Florida. They have 94 missed tackles on the season already. That's a lot of missed tackles. And Texas is one of the best teams in space, operating in space. Start creating and engineering one-on-one matchups in space, and then start being able to weaponize his speed in that space, whether it be a Jaden Blue or whether that be, a Isaiah Bond who's coming back to the mix. So that might be a problem for Florida. So I wonder if you'll get a little mix where Florida will come down and try their best to suffocate and suppress some of those quick, easy throws, and then almost force Texas to either abandon those to a certain extent or run the football, or maybe they'll take some shots downfield, which Texas could do, especially considering how bad Florida has been in defending deep vertical shots, 20-plus yards downfield. So that's something to look at. I'll throw this out there. I've been saying it all week long. You're going to see the A-gap blitz. You're going to see delayed rush blitz. You're going to see the slot cornerback blitz, and you'll probably see it early before the game is out of hand. What's the point Florida using those concepts when they're down by 3 touchdowns? Is that they're a 3-touchdown dog in this game? So I think you'll see that stuff early, and Texas better have an answer. They should, because they had a whole entire off week to get ready for it. So they should be polished. They should have pristine execution. There should be a crystallized focus early for Texas. They should be clean and they should be healthy. So they should be fresher. I mean, this team is coming off a game versus Florida. Is coming off a game versus Georgia, most physical team that they've played all season long, and they are beat up as a result. No surprise at all. But Texas should take full advantage of that, and maybe that's why Sark will dive a little bit into maybe some of the bully ball, and maybe he figures they're a little bit beat up. We shall see. But the big issue for Texas offense really is not about a problem that Florida's going to present. They're 68th in pass defense. They're 88th in rush defense. It's really about, has Texas corrected the issues? Have they solved the problems that they had in pass protection and that they had in run blocking in the last 2 games? Maybe going back to the last 3. Even against Oklahoma, the offense still wasn't, it didn't have that mojo Sark talks about. And remember, you only had 3 running back runs over 10 yards in that game versus Oklahoma. They just both broke for touchdowns. Got 30-some yard footage. So he's like, to hell with it. But your running game still wasn't consistent. Once Oklahoma adjusted to the split flow outside zone, remember that was the split flow zone. The split flow wide zone was there. That was the key concept that Texas found after troubleshooting, and they popped those 2 big runs for Trey Wisner with those. And they popped, I think, another 10-yarder with Jaden Blue And that was about it. And Oklahoma made the adjustment. By then, the game was over. Oklahoma couldn't score more than a touchdown in that game anyway. They had the ability. They didn't have the ability to throw the ball vertically. And once Texas got up in that game, that was all she wrote. And I don't know what run concept against Florida they're going to find that can work in that way. But if they don't find one, and I don't know if they really ever found one versus Vanderbilt that worked that well, then Texas will resort to the quick throws and the detached screens and swing screens on the outside to be the extension of the running game. So that's Sark pivoting and modifying, and it's just smart. You still need to take advantage of the numbers advantage, the light boxes, and all the space they're going to give you on the perimeter, and that's the best way to do it. All right, let's jump to the other side. Let's talk about this Texas defense versus the Florida offense. We don't know what quarterback they're going to bring to the table. And the truth is, guys, I don't know if it matters too much. They do have some threats on the outside that Texas needs to identify. Eugene Wilson won't play. He's having season-ending surgery, but Elijah Badger, who's also listed on the injury report, got to know where he is. Guy's averaging 23 yards per reception. He's a dude. All right. And Kamir Dike, he also is averaging damn near 19 yards per reception. He only got 15 of them. Listen, how about this? Elijah Badger has 24 receptions, averaging 23 yards per reception. Kamir Dike has 23 reception, averaging almost 19 yards per reception. So they don't get the ball a lot. But when they do, they're going down the field with it. All right. These are some chunky yardage throws, chunky yardage plays down the field. I told you guys, Elijah Badger has 4 receptions that are 40 plus yards on the season. So he's the guy that they want to pound the rock, and then take their shots. And usually it works really well with DJ Lagway, especially with the arm he's got. But I think this offense, they may try to take a couple of shots with those guys down the field. If Elijah Badger doesn't play, that's one less issue that Texas has to address, one less thing they got to worry about. I think they're going to try to run the rock. I think they're going to try to take the Mississippi State game plan, run the rock, control the ball, milk the clock, limit possessions for Texas offense, keep their offense on the sideline. And that's why it's going to be up to this defense to get them off the field, to get 3 and outs. And I think it's going to be tough either way, no matter who's is the starting quarterback in Florida, even if they are running the football and they're committed to it. It's going to be tough for them to drive the length of the field. I mean, we've talked about this. Texas has allowed 10 scoring drives in the last 2 games that they've played, Vanderbilt and Georgia, and only 2 of them have been more than 38 yards. So they've been short fields. So if the offense if they quit shooting themselves in the foot and they quit having these self-inflicted wounds and giving the opposing team these short fields, it's very likely that you're not going to be able to drive the length of the field on the Texas defense. And the reason is we always talk about the Bill Walsh philosophy, right? Human error, right? The reason, if you're going to drive the length of the field on Texas, you're going to do it in a 9 or 10 play drive. That's just the reality of it, right? You're going to do it close to a double-digit play drive. And if you're going to do that, you got to have almost perfect, pristine execution on every play with all 11 players. The likelihood of that is very low. The more plays you have in the drive, likelihood is somebody's going to screw it up. Somebody's going to miss a block. Somebody's going to drop a pass. Quarterback's going to be off. Somebody's going to miss an assignment. There's a penalty, whatever it is. That puts you behind the chains. And then that makes your job harder to convert. And then you end up at 3rd and long, odds flip in favor of the defense, and then everything kind of unravels. Right? So you want to be able to score in single-digit drives, all right, so you can eliminate as much human error as possible. And the only way you're going to do that is explosive plays. That's the only way you're going to score, unless the opponent gives you a short field, which Texas has done way too much in the last 2 games, right? So if they stop that, it's going to be hard for you to march the length of the field in the Texas defense because they don't give up explosive plays. They're number 1 in the country in 20-plus plays, 20-plus yard plays allowed. They only allowed 13 20-plus yard plays all year long. 1 of those has been on the ground. They've allowed 1 20-plus yard run the entire season. And it was that touchdown run. Was it the UTSA or something like that? Remember that? That long run that they had? They've allowed 1, guys. 1 20-plus yard run the entire season. Oh, by the way, Florida's got just 7 20-plus yard runs. They're not that explosive either. By the way, that's 102nd in college football in 20-plus yard runs. So they don't get a lot of explosive runs. Texas is the best defense in the country in explosive plays allowed. So Texas has only allowed one explosive run all year long of 20-plus yards. And I don't see Florida with their quarterback situation being able to put together a long, effective drive. So as long as Texas gives them, a long field to have to drive and not a short one, it's going to be tough on them to put points on the board on this Texas defense. The explosive plays are the key. I looked at explosive play margin because this was part of the Bill Walsh philosophy, right? If you win, it was in his book, The Winning Drive. If you win the explosive play margin by at least one play, you win the game 60% of the time. You win it by at least two plays, you win the game 80% of the time. Texas explosive play margin right now, just for the season right now, plus 44, best in the country. In terms of the explosive plays they generate on offense and the explosive plays they allow on defense. They're at plus 44 right now. Nobody else is even close. Nobody else actually is within 10 plays of them, based on my research. Nobody's within 10 plays of their explosive play margin. And that's going to, I think that's going to actually be a factor in this game. I think they'll come to fruition in this matchup because I don't know if they're going to be able, Florida, to have many explosive plays against this Texas defense. And I think this is the game where the explosivity may come back to the Texas offense. Hopefully that's the case. We shall see. All right. Well, we come back. We'll get into Off the Record on the other side, right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right. Usually, off the record is reserved for crazy, wacky stories outside of the sports world. But today, we're going to keep it sports related because this story is breaking news. Jonte Cook is no longer with the program. Per Inside Texas, they're saying that Jonte Cook, the wide receiver for Texas, no longer with the program. Yeah, I mean, the last time we really saw him on the season, he just has 8 receptions, 137 yards, 17 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he really hadn't seen the field since that drop pass that he had. Remember that deep drop pass that he had earlier this season? And it seems like after that, I mean, I haven't been tracking his actual playing time and snaps, but it does seem like after that, and we didn't see much of Jonte Cook after that. And remember, guys, I always talked about the circle of trust. That Sark has a circle of trust with his wide receivers, and it was going to be larger than it ever has been in terms of this season. Well, we know who's in the circle of trust. And I remember saying, I don't know if Jonte Cook's in the circle of trust.
No.
Silas Bowden's clearly in the circle of trust. Silas Bowden, because they try to go out of their way to get Silas Bowden the football. So we knew Silas Bowden was there. We know Golden and Bond. That's automatic. Those guys are entrenched in the circle of trust. Ryan Wingo, as a true freshman, is in that circle of trust. DeAndre Moore is in that circle of trust. Silas Bowden is in there. And so it's 5 deep. It's big. It's larger than it's ever been. But Jonte Cook was not in the circle of trust. And I think he was at one point, and then ended up, I don't know, somehow being, I don't know how he got outside of it, but he clearly is outside of it, and now is no longer with the program. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully he ends up, going somewhere where they can maximize his talent. He's a really talented guy. I just think Texas just has an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. They do. There's no reps for him, and it ain't about. I mean, these guys don't get a lot of snaps either. Remember, we said you only gonna get like 4-5 targets max at wide receiver in the Texas offense. Hell, Jaden Blue's getting more targets than the wide receivers are getting. And then you got Gunnar Helm, who's now one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the country. Hell, Gunnar Helm's got more explosive receptions of 20-plus yards than anybody on your roster. So you all of a sudden going into the season, you're like, yeah, Gunnar Helm's going to be, he'll be a role player for us. And now you're like, no, I got to feature Gunnar Helm. I got to feature him along with Bond and Golden. And then you better give Wingo a couple of touches because he's explosive. He's one of the most explosive receivers in the country. I just think ultimately, I'm sure that there was something going on potentially with his frustration on his part and maybe frustration on the part of the coaches that he wasn't able to deliver in the manner in which they wanted him to deliver too. But it's just not a lot of snaps at wide receiver. And Sark always says, don't count your snaps, make your snaps count. I don't think Jonte Cook was able to make his snaps count. And I think he started counting his snaps. And I would too.
Yeah, no, I don't blame him. I mean, you get knocked out. We don't know everything that went behind the scenes, but it's not hugely surprising seeing what his role is this season, knowing that there's going to be guys coming up, knowing that Ryan Wingo has kind of, whenever you see those guys start to pass you that are in that next class, and I think that Ryan Wingo just passing him and starting in a game before he's getting his starts might be a final kind of knock on of just like, man, all right, that next class passed me. You're going to be recruiting. You already got more receivers in the next class. And so at some point,
going to bring in some transfer portal guys too. You always bring in 1 or 2 of them.
So it's like, how many times am I going to get pushed down where you're not giving me the shot? And I get, hopefully, and wish him the best that he goes on and finds another great place to go. Hopefully not somewhere we have to play, but you know what? You probably will end up going somewhere you have to play. That's the reality of the new college football we live in, right? It is.
They don't have any restrictions on that now. And he's a tremendous talent. There's no doubt about that. He couldn't find a role here at Texas after they basically reinvented the passing game this offseason. And it's clear they love Golden. Golden plays more than anybody else.
Yeah.
They love Golden. Golden is the guy. They trust Golden more than they trust anybody else. And what that tells me is Golden's also really good as a blocker. Mm-hmm. So they just like him as a blocker. Quinn trusts Golden. That's why he loves him in the red zone. So Golden's the guy. Bond is probably he's your most irreplaceable receiver because he's got the most unique element in his skill set, that world-class speed you can't coach, you can't teach. And you could argue the offense has missed it since he got hurt.
Yeah.
It missed that world-class speed. So that's why, and Sark always needs that guy in his offense. And so that's why Bond is your number 2. And then honestly, truth is, it's more that's your true number 3 now.
Yeah.
Or at least not number 3. I'm just saying, like, in terms of the circle of trust that I'm talking about, it's more because Sark loves his unselfish nature. He loves the fact that he's a great role model in that room. He loves the intangibles he brings to the table. And now we're starting to see him actually be productive on the field. I mean, you've had 2 games where he's been your leading receiver out there. Now we're starting to see the first 3 games of the season. He couldn't even get a target.
No, he was doing the other things, but not getting.
He was doing other things. Yes, no doubt.
And
he's
so I get it.
And everything else.
And this is one of those ones where you see it, and normally you don't get it during the season, but you get it at the end. It's that attrition that, it's not it happens in every program, and especially for wide receivers where three guys, maybe 4, are going to really get to lion's share your targets. And if you're on the outside of that one, you're just kind of on the outside.
Coming back either. You don't know who got to come back on you. I mean, I'm talking about Matthew Golden on the. I think he has eligibility left. He can come back. Everybody assumes Bond is going to leave, but he can come back.
Yeah,
that's addition to the guys.
You still figure they're going to be bringing at least one person in the transfer portal, if not 2 or 3, maybe. They brought in 3 this year, right? Mm-hmm. Bolden, Golden, and Bond.
Yep.
So you go 2 to 3 more wide receivers brought in that way. You have the freshman class that's going to be coming in.
You got 2 studs in the freshman class coming in.
Wingo's going to be there. DeAndre Moore's still going to be there. Yeah. And then if any of the guys stay, that's just a lot of people that are there. It's kind of what that attrition is. So I feel bad that it didn't work out, but at the same part, probably best for all parties involved. If it's going to be something where he's unhappy and Texas isn't using him, don't have someone unhappy in the locker room.
That's no path to play for him.
Yeah.
Right now.
I mean, there is, but it's increase your odds, but it's just really, really hard to do that, especially in one season. And it's pretty much for next season, and that's where it gets hard. I
think he's leaving because he saw there's no path to play.
Yeah.
The path to play would be, especially once the freshman now is ahead of you too. In addition to the 3 guys we mentioned, they like Bolden more than they like him. Bolden could come back too. They like Bolden more than they like him. And in addition, like he knows, starts bringing in other guys. He knows in recruiting they're bringing in too. And Sark loves the transfer portal. I just think he said, all right, there's no path for me to play. And the smart thing is to leave. And I love this quote from Fran Brown. He's the Syracuse head coach. Syracuse is trying to have a resurgence there. So he's a Syracuse head coach, and he's one of the best recruiters in the country. He was actually known for being an ace recruiter. And I believe he was with, if I'm not mistaken, was it Georgia he was with? I believe he was like the DB coach at Georgia, like an ace recruiter. But now he's the head coach there with Syracuse. And he was talking to the media earlier this week about, the transfer portal and getting players, and had one of the most sincere, truest moments that we've heard from a coach about the transfer portal. And it's just the reality of it. And Sark knows it too, which is part of the reason Sark wants to rotate and play a lot of guys, why Sark had to expand his circle of trust of wide receivers to 5. Here is Fran Brown, the Syracuse coach, talking about the new reality of college football.
Yeah, we like to recruit. And when you recruit and you got a lot of good players, you better play them while they're going in the portal. Just the nature of the business. If you got good players sitting on the bench, they're going to say bye. So all the other coaches out there that don't want to play all your good players, don't play them. Let me get them.
It don't matter what reason that you're playing, man. That's not Sark's fault that John Tate Cook is not getting playing time. No. He's just playing the best guys. But the good players, they're not sitting on the bench. Now with the transfer portal. And now with NIL, they're leaving. It's rare. Trust me, the Arch Manning thing, that's the exception to the rule. All right? That's the exception to the rule. It's rare to be able to get that. And I think Sark can actually, establish a unique trend here at Texas. As opposed to other schools when it comes to quarterback, but almost every other position, they've done it really good at O-lineman too, actually. I will give them that too. They've done a really good job at O-line, keeping guys here and not a lot of guys hitting the transfer portal, even though they've been stockpiling talent. But most positions, man, if the good players aren't playing, they're leaving. And that's another reason why Sark is big on, no, we got to rotate guys. We got to play a lot of guys. Because if our good players aren't playing, they're already looking at greener pastures. straight cash homie greener, and figuratively greener pastures so they can get more playing time. All right, there you go. So that's the latest. We'll talk about that on the other side. John Tate Cook no longer with the team. Wishing the young man the best. He's a tremendous talent, and I think he'll be fine. Hell, actually, how about this? Jeff Ketchum is saying that he was dismissed from the team. So, which is different than the Inside Texas report that's saying he is no longer with the team. Being dismissed is different than being no longer with the team. So don't know if that's just miscommunication about the wording or if he was indeed dismissed. That's very different.
Sparta Sark's going to talk to the media today, so
there you go.
It will probably come up.
You think? No doubt. All right, we'll come back. We'll discuss that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday edition of the show. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, comes up with a brand new theme, usually centered around some pop culture event, some anniversary or date. But today it is a tribute to the late grade music icon Quincy Jones. So all the songs are projects of one Quincy Jones. And yeah, We Are the World, appropriate for this time right now, considering a couple of days ago we were not as united as a country as we should be. Hopefully today we got some healing that is taking place in America now that the election is settled. So there you go. We are the world. Remember, that was a very inspirational jam back in the day. Yeah, how many artists took part in that?
I mean, a ton.
Was it like 30? It was like 30. It was like
It'd be
a
like
lot.
30, 35. Yeah,
a bunch of them. It's too many. Okay, we agree now.
No, it's a 7-minute song. You're trying to fit everybody in.
Yeah, it was too many. You should have just narrowed that down. And there was some artists that didn't need to be there. Now in retrospect, we agree?
There was, but I understand how this works because I've thrown shows like this or done, and you go, well, I have to ask 20 people because if I'm probably only going to get like 5 or 6 yeses, and then you ask 20 and you get like 15 yeses, and you're like, oh no. I don't have time for 15. I thought most people were going to say no. So I have to fill this amount of slots. So I needed this. So I had to ask a bunch because if I don't ask, I can't get them in time. We can't get it done. So I think they asked, and a lot of people were like, oh man, you want me to be on a cat? Like they realized they were the low end of it and they all said yes.
Yep. Because all they really wanted was like Michael Jackson and like like the top guys, like Stevie Wonder, that group back then. And
no, I mean like Dan Aykroyd's singing in there. This is like, why is Dan Aykroyd in here?
Why is Dan Aykroyd in there? What is happening?
I mean, I get he's one of the Blues Brothers, but at the same part, he shouldn't be a weird.
How did he get the invite? He felt like he was like, "Damn, I made it."
No. That is a one where he gets a call from like his other buddies, like, "Hey man, you gonna be at this big event? Like everyone's gonna be there." He's like, "Wait, I didn't get a call." Hey, agent, call.
Seriously, he's like, yeah, because he's an agent. He probably shares agent with a couple of those guys. He's like, make it happen, man. Make it happen. Oh man, I'll find a list of all the artists that took place in it, but they could have narrowed that list down a little bit. They need to have all those folks.
Oh no, when you look at the list, there's some, and I get some of this too. Like at the time, they were big artists, so it makes sense. Yeah. And now in retrospect, you look back and you're like, dude, that dude had one hit. There is no reason they need to be at this.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. You know what the real? Okay. You know what they should have started and they didn't. Didn't the Jacksons make it? Like the Jacksons, not just Michael.
Well, yeah, but that has to that was.
Then they put like Latoya in there and like Tito and Marlon and Randy. It's like, okay, at that point the Jacksons are no longer a big thing. All right, Michael Jackson has separated. It is him. That'd be like doing a new one and then putting the rest of Destiny Child in there because Beyonce's. It's like no. Sorry, Kelly. Sorry, Latoya. You don't get to make it. It's Beyonce's show. You don't put the rest of NSYNC in there. You just put Justin Timberlake. That's all.
So yeah. So just
Jackson's
just soloist. Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Kenny Rogers, James Ingram, Tina Turner, Billy Joel, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick, Willie Nelson, Al Jarreau, Bruce Springsteen, Kenny Loggins, Steve Perry, Daryl Hall, Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper, Kim Carnes, Bob Dylan, and Ray Charles all got their own little part. And then there's another 25 people that are in the chorus, including Jackie Jackson, Latoya Jackson, Marlon Jackson, and Randy Jackson, Tito Jackson are all in the chorus.
All the Jacksons got a little credit there, man.
All the Pointer Sisters are in there.
That didn't age well.
Huey Lewis brought some people with him.
He brought people?
He had a couple guys from the news.
Come on, the news. Come on. That's what I'm saying. You're right. They just didn't want to turn anybody away at that point. They're like, all right, bring whoever you want. The fact that, hold up, why was Dionne Warwick in it? Dionne Warwick that big? Even at the time, Dionne Warwick's not that. Is she that big? I think she had that like psychic network or whatever. I don't know what the hell.
She knew it was coming. She called Quincy before he called her.
Seriously. Oh man, that is great. Okay. Yeah. They said, how about this? This is how you know your theory's right. Your theory's right. 'Cause I'm reading right here. It says Stevie Wonder asked Eddie Murphy to participate, but Eddie Murphy had a conflict.
Yeah.
But Murphy declined because he was busy recording. He was recording Party All the Time at the time.
Oh, so him and Rick James were busy.
They were busy. They actually were. That's why Rick James didn't do it, did he?
No.
Was he asked?
Well, they couldn't bring Rick James in there. That brings up one of the budgets too high. There was
high
one
would be the opposite. Yes,
that one budget was real high.
Yeah. Oh man, that is great. Oh, I bet that's you know what? See, and when they do the biopic for Quincy Jones, this is gonna be this scene is gonna be huge. Honestly, you might need to make it a series. I don't even know if you can do a movie and do it.
Give it to FX. I just want to see that casting department.
somehow Lawrence Fishburne's going to end up in it. I don't know how, but he's going to end up in it.
Do you think guys like Smokey Robinson, who's just in the chorus and not singing a solo, is like, really? I'll get solo in this one?
It's like, yeah, hi, Smokey. But you know what?
You put me
you're
over
right
here
about
with
that.
John Oates. Come on.
I will say some of this didn't age well, but I get it. At the time, I get it. Oh man. And how many didn't they do multiple We Are the Worlds?
They've done other
they've done other
things, because it was called USA for Africa was the name of it. But I know there was a metal version of it too.
Okay.
I have to look up what the metal name of it, but there was a metal thing that they did that was really just special. The heavy metal Here in Aid was the name of it. They tried to do their own We Are the World.
Hold up, like a rock rendition?
Yes, it was like all heavy metal bands.
Wow. Is this available to listen to?
Yeah, it was called the track was called Stars.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 40 heavy metal musicians got together and did a track.
That's ambitious. That is, I go about that. That's pretty damn ambitious.
And it was for famine relief in Africa. So it was same thing.
Yeah, so they have done a lot of these actually, because they did one in 2010 for the Haiti earthquake.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Well, everybody wants to be like, because the event seems like it's fun to do, but then you get done with it and it's.
Yeah. And I wonder who was on that one. I wonder who was on these different renditions, because I haven't really heard of like it being, I don't know, like a star-studded affair, but maybe I just haven't been keeping up with it. So anyway, there you go. That's way too much discussion about We Are the World, but fascinating topic there. That's what I'm saying. Quincy Jones biopic is going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. And like I said, it may have to be a series, and you're right. Maybe give it to, if you want to do it well, you got to give it to like Apple or like HBO. But if you just want to do it quickly, give it to FX, and they'll pump it out in like a month. Like a couple of months, they'll pump that thing out. But they did the OJ, they do all like the American crime stories and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like American Horror Stories.
Dude, I can't wait to see who they cast. I just want that casting department to do it, because they have hit on like 2 people in multiple shows.
Who did the Aaron Hernandez thing? Was that
FX again? Yeah, they're all part of that American sports drama thing or scandal thing. Okay, it's all part of this kind of like greater series of series. And
I think they're doing it now, ironically, when they pick the casting. I think they're doing it because they know it's going to be real bad and they know it's going to go viral. Because that Belichick one was terrible. It was like,
Belichick was terrible. The one to look up is Rob Gronkowski in it, because that dude nails it.
Oh, was he on money? Was it okay? That was good casting.
So dead on. They were like, how is this the only guy you nailed?
He might have been the easiest one when you think about it, but yeah. Did they have Brady in that one? So did they do a Brady?
I guess they did. I don't know. I know that Robert Kraft did not look like Robert Kraft either.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't watched any of those. I have the what's the one about the Clippers? I have it clipped.
Yes.
Any clip, the name of it. I have it on my queue, and I just haven't had time to watch it. And every time I turn it on, I see like Lawrence Fishburne. I'm like, I just turn it right off.
When all the players are all like, everyone in the entire movie is between 5'9" and 6'2". It's a basketball.
And the woman walks up to him and she's like at his chin. I'm like, well, how? That can't be right. He's supposed to be like a forward. All right, there you go. All right, there you go. So that is it. That is our musically themed day of the week. We appreciate Patrick hooking us up for a new theme Thursday. Also, he hooks us up for the topic for the big fat poll of the day. That is already posted at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. How many sacks will Florida get against Texas? The 4 options we gave you were 0, 1-2, 3-4, and 5+. 1-2 with 58% of the vote right now. 28% for 3-4, 11% for 0, and 3% for 5+.
Yeah, they better not be 5+.
I agree. There's a couple Warrior awards out there.
No, honestly, 3-4, that is alarming. But we're not going to press the panic button. But if we go 5+, then that's a panic button moment. So I'm hoping we don't get there. 1-2, that's reasonable. 1-2 is that shows improvement. That area is still, you're improving and getting better. 3-4, I don't know if you can say that's improvement if you give up 3-4 sacks after a bye week.
Yeah,
to Florida when that was your big issue the last 2 weeks. So We shall see. All right. Speaking of Texas football, shout out to my man CB at ChrisGB002000 that has sent us some of the updates on the Jonte Cook situation. So here's what is wild about the reporting on Jonte Cook's departure from the team. So, and that's what I love about Texas football. You got a lot of really great companies and a lot of really great entities and reporters that cover Texas football. So you get, multiple reports, and you'll get kind of multiple sides with different sources. So Anwar Richardson of Orange Bloods, he tweeted out that Orange Bloods Jeff Ketchum has learned that Texas wide receiver Jonte Cook has been dismissed from the team. Inside Texas first reported, all right, they're the first ones to report it. They reported that Jonte Cook is no longer with the team, all right, that he was just no longer with the team. And then I saw the report from Mike Roach of 247 Sports, and he reported that Jonte Cook is no longer with the team after both sides mutually decided to part ways. Mutually. So you got one report saying mutual. You got another report saying he was dismissed, and another report just saying, it's parted ways. It's just parted ways with the team, no longer with the team. Dismissed is very different than him either deciding that he wants to move on from the team, or him departing from the team. So when Sark is asked about it today, I'm sure we'll get more clarity on exactly what happened. But I think ultimately we know why he's no longer with the team. Well, we don't know like the specifics, details, but we know where it started. The genesis of it is he wasn't playing a lot. And we had talked about that on this show multiple times. Where's Jonte Cook? Seems like after he had that drop that he had on that deep pass earlier this season, that after that, we didn't see much of Jonte Cook. Just didn't see a lot of him. And I think slowly but surely that was the point where he started to slip out of the circle of trust. So it's a fade outside the circle of trust. And for those who don't know, my definition of circle of trust is Sark's circle of wide receivers that he trusts to put on the field in the rotation. And usually it has been really tight, right? He hadn't, last year it was just 3 guys in that rotation mostly, and not even Jonte Cook could crack it. It was only 3 guys. And this year we all predicted that he was going to expand the circle of trust to 5 to 6 receivers. I remember when they said it was going to be 6, and I said it won't get to 6. That's too many. That's just too many. I just don't see Sark doing that. He got close. He got to 5. It's Bond,
we had the discussion
Golden
earlier this year about who would be in and out.
Yep. And I honestly, I think I said I didn't predict Cook would be out. No. I think I predicted like DeAndre Moore or somebody would fall out of it or something like that. I didn't think it'd be Cook, but I was wrong. Cook's out. Moore is entrenched. He is right now entrenched as it. So is Golden. So is and Bolden's the one. I think it was between Bolden and Cook, and Bolden's the guy that ended up taking those reps from Jonte Cook. And I think they liked his play in that Oklahoma game. That was a culture play that showed a culture warrior that aligned with what Sark and his team preach, which is, don't count your snaps, make your snaps count. Don't give up on a play. That guy being a great teammate, him falling on the football, all that kind of stuff. So I think after that play, we start to see the coaches more and more start to not only trust Silas Bolden, but try to find ways to deliberately get him the football. Like they are scheming him open. And you don't see that with Jonte Cook. I said that a couple weeks ago. I said, man, you see Sark come up with ways to get Silas Bolden the football, whether it be an end and around, and whether it be a screen that they set up, and a manufactured touch or a target to motion for Silas Bolden. You don't see that stuff for Jonte Cook. You don't see something that looks like Sark drew up a play literally or designed a play literally just to get it to him in space. You don't see that from Jonte Cook. But you see it from Silas Bolden like once a game. And which means they wanted him to crack the circle of trust. And with Jonte Cook, they were fine with him fading out of it. They were fine with him fading, which means that's what behind the scenes we need clarity on. Why were you fine with him fading out the circle of trust? Why wasn't there a push to deliberately get him more touches and to get him more involved like it was for Silas Bolden? Because it was clearly a premeditated, deliberate right? Effort to get Silas Bolden involved. And you never saw that from Jonte Cook or from the coaches for Jonte Cook. And I'm not criticizing, by the way, or complaining. Not at all. I love what they've done to the wide receiver core. I'm just saying I think that's the question. What happened? Why didn't? And that's, as a player, that's when it is time for you to move on. Right? When the coaches stop yelling at you, that's when you need to be concerned. When the coach is yelling at you and he's ripping you a new one every damn day and he's on your case every damn day, that actually means the coach is taking time to invest in you. That he likes you, that he sees potential in you. He ain't just wasting his damn time. But when the coaches, when they stop yelling at you, start yelling at somebody else and investing time in somebody else, might mean coaches have moved on. So that's what I want to know. Did the coaches kind of move on from Jonte Cook? Did he lose their trust? And how did he lose their trust? And was it just because his play on the field and production on the field that lost their trust? Because that can easily happen. Or was it something behind the scenes that we're unaware of that led to the loss of trust in Jonte Cook? Either way, he faded from that circle of trust. And like I said, the coaches didn't put in enough effort to get back in the good graces and within the circle of trust of the coaches, or they were fine with him fading because they had so many good players. They're like, no, you're good. We got Golden. We got Bond. We got Wingo. We got Moore. We got Bolden. We're good. We got 5 deep. We don't really even need to force the issue with you. And we got guys coming in next year, and there's a transfer portal. What do I always say about wide receiver? Deepest position in football at any level, guys. They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
All around.
I mean,
you have another one. Jonte Cook's going to be in the transfer portal pretty soon. 5-star. You're welcome. They're everywhere.
No. I mean, yeah, you brought in 3 this year in Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Silas Bolden. One of those is a senior. Golden and Bond are both juniors. So you assume Bond is going pro. You assume Bond is going pro. Golden is, I don't know. You don't know?
Yes, toss up.
It depends on, what his NIL is versus what his draft stock is. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to go walk in there and say, are you a mid-round pick? Are you a late-round pick? Where does NFL see you? And if you're a late-round pick, do you come back and try and boost that stock a little bit more and make some NIL in the way? Or do you go ahead and take it? So that one I don't know yet because I don't know where his draft stock is right now. Mm-hmm. If he's gonna be a mid-round pick or a late-round pick.
Not sure.
But I think that kind of depends on that one. But yeah, other than that, but you can still bring in 2 or 3 more because guys still want to come in. And by the way, you're most likely playing Arch Manning next year.
Yep.
So you've got a pretty good recruiter going to be playing quarterback.
They want to play with that dude. That's why you're going to get a lot of new ones in.
So they're going to be plenty of people calling you.
Yeah. Transfer portal going to be packed with the wide receivers that want to play for Arch Manning. Yeah. I'm with you. I agree with you. And I think, ultimately, Gunnar Helms' ascent also has had an impact on the receiving,
definitely.
Like the targets, right? Because nobody saw it. Sark can say what he wants to say, but he didn't see Gunnar Helms becoming. He's got more explosive receptions, guys, than any Texas player. He's got 10. It's more than any Texas receiver. He's one of the best tight ends in the country. He's a John Mackey Award semifinalist. Nobody saw that coming. So he took, I think, some target share from the wide receivers too. So I just think ultimately they don't need Jonte Cook. So he needs to go somewhere where he's needed.
Yeah.
That's why the wide receiver is the deepest position, in my opinion, in football at any level. Because guys like that, I mean, he's going to be in the transfer portal, and Sark's getting 2. He's going to get 2 transfer portal receivers a year and probably send 1 to the league every year.
Yeah,
that's the pipeline that he's trying to start. All right, we have not hit the horn headlines yet because I have been running off at the mouth. So I apologize about that, Patrick. Let's hit the horn headlines, and then we'll come back and get into Rod's rant of the day next segment, and that will be a breakdown. We'll talk about the game tonight between the Ravens and the Bengals. We'll talk about the Texans and their matchup coming up versus the Detroit Lions, and give you an update on that Dak Prescott hamstring injury. But before we do any of that, let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the horn headlines.
All right, your horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Rockets handled the Spurs 127-100 last night, with Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet both scoring 21 points in the game. The Rockets led by 25 at halftime and kept pace with the second half to the easy victory. The Mavericks picked up a 119-99 win over the Bulls, with Luka Doncic putting up 27 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Timberwolves in San Antonio. In the NFL, the Bengals head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. The two teams played in an overtime thriller a month ago that the Ravens won 41-38. The 4-5 Bengals need the win to stay alive in the playoff hunt and the chase for the AFC North title. And that's your Horn headlines.
When was the Jonte Cook drop on that deep ball? It was from Arch, was it not? This one in Arch's game. Was it Lou Monroe? I'm trying to think when that was. Because that's when his fall out of favor started. That's when it started. And my man CJ Vogel put up the snap counts for Jonte Cook leading up to his departure. 30 snaps in the Colorado State game, 19 at Michigan, 15 versus UTSA, 39 versus Lou Monroe, and then 7 versus Mississippi State, and 4 versus Oklahoma. Damn. It was a precipitous drop. Like that was a precipitous drop off from like out of the circle of trust for the coaches. So I'm not really sure. Like I said, that on the field is all we really saw. Then after that, we saw the decline in his snap count, but not really sure what happened behind the scenes. But I do wish the best for Jonte Cook. I think he actually is a really good talent, and hell, you'll probably end up having to play that dude in the future. He ends up with a team in the SEC or ends up on a team that's a powerhouse somehow, which he probably will. I mean, coming out, everybody was recruiting Jonte Cook. All right, we come back. We'll get into NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll discuss the game tonight, the Thursday night game, division rivals between the Ravens and the Bengals. We'll also get into the Texans and their matchup coming up versus the team that might be the hottest team, or at least playing the best brand of football right now in the NFL. That's the Detroit Lions. And we'll give an update on the Dak Prescott hamstring injury. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime on the Horn. Rod Davis coming back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Before we get into previewing the matchup tonight between the Ravens and the Bengals, also want to talk a little bit about the Texans and their matchup versus Detroit, even though we got some more time to talk about that tomorrow. Let's get into the Jane Slater report about the severity of the Dak Prescott injury and his status. She tweeted out yesterday, as the Cowboys weigh in on Dak Prescott's IR status, sources tell me the initial diagnosis is a partial avulsion of his hamstring tendon, which is partially torn off the bone. I'm told it typically takes more than a 4-week recovery. In some cases, they let it scar over, repair, and then strengthen. With that being said, Prescott is seeking other opinions, which is why there is currently a reluctance to place him on IR or make any determinations about a timeline for return. So it's bad. So at least 4 weeks. She's saying it usually takes more than a 4-week recovery. They're looking at second opinions. I think you're talking about 6 weeks, at least 6 weeks now into the season. I mean, that pretty much is the season. And I don't know how well Cooper Rush is going to perform during that time, because they could win some games during that time span. But I would, if I was the Cowboys, I would start thinking about the upcoming draft and my draft position in 2025 rather than trying your best to compete and focusing all of your efforts, resources, and energy on competing in 2024. Not saying it's over, but if Cooper Rush and Trey Lance can win you games and keep you mathematically in it, great. But let's not start making trades and making moves, and not make trades. I've traded lines going, but let's not start making moves to try to win this year, because I think that is I think it's right now a futile effort for them to try to win this year, considering where the division is. Washington's really good. Philadelphia, who they'll see coming up this weekend, Philadelphia's really good. And even when you were healthy, I don't think the Cowboys were going to be able to compete for the division or even the conference, even if they were healthy. If I was the Cowboys, you're closer to tanking than you are to competing this season.
Yeah.
Especially with this news. So Dak Prescott's probably going to be out for the foreseeable future. We don't know if he's going to be on season-ending IR or if he's going to be on the 4-week IR for the Dallas Cowboys. It'll be one of those. I think it'll be probably close to the season-ending IR, but we'll keep you up to speed. Also, Dallas Morning News is reporting he may need surgery to repair it, and who knows? I mean, they're saying that it's going to take 6 weeks or more than 4 weeks to recover. They may decide to have the surgery, have Dak ahead of schedule for next season. And those are the kind of decisions I'm talking about. Like, hey, man, let's think about 2025, Dak Prescott.
And again, you just traded for a project wide receiver that you're going to need the offseason to have Dak Prescott available and have when you're ready for camp and have Dak at all those events to get that to get Mingo where you want him to be before the beginning of next season. So places like that, it just seems like, why would you want to rush any of it? I think at this point, the reason we haven't heard anything is because they're deciding which IR to put him on. Mm-hmm. I think once you hear off the bone, it feels like 4 weeks seems light.
Yeah, agreed. Ooh, off the bone. It just sounds like, it sounds painful as hell. But that makes, to me, it makes the decision easy for the Cowboys. I'd put them on season-ending IR, and I would start not the tanking process, but look at that 2025. Even when it comes to the head coach that I'm going to hire, now I can really focus all my attention and energy on 2025. Who's going to be my next coach? What's our vision for the future for the Cowboys? Dak needs to, if he's having the surgery, whatever, we don't even have to worry about that. We can expedite his timeline for 2025. Draft position in 2025. Draft picks for 2025. All those things I think you should focus on if you're the Cowboys. Because if you are going to be bad, which looks like right now you're not going to be good. So if you're going to be drafting in the top 10 and you are one of the better drafting teams in the NFL, this could be the draft that really resets your window. If you hit it right, if you are drafting that high and you can hit on some of those high mid-round draft picks, if you have one of those types of drafts, Cowboys, you're not far from being able to reinvent or reset your window a little bit and reinvent yourself, but we shall see if the Cowboys are going to do that. Jerry says they're all in on this season and that they're they're buyers. They're not sellers. And they were. They bought before the trade deadline. They did not sell. Okay. The other news, hamstring related, since we're talking about the Cowboys and the hamstring issues that they're dealing with. The Texans are also dealing with a hamstring injury to their best player. Nico Collins has passed all tests for his hamstring injury with the training staff. No setbacks per league sources. Regained speed, mobility, and is ready to go, according to Aaron Wilson. He says a matter of when, not if, he'll be designated for return. Team still determining if activating him for the Lions game. He might not practice today, which he didn't. This was from yesterday. He did not practice. And if he doesn't practice today, which we'll see, we'll talk about that tomorrow. There's no way he's going to play versus the Lions. That'd be foolish to bring him back prematurely without practice time and without a week of game planning, and to get him acclimated after coming off a 4-week hamstring injury. I don't know if they would risk it with their best player, but this is what I'll say, because I know Texans fans like me have been freaking out about the pass protection for the Texans, and it is bad. I mean, there's no doubt. It could be the worst pass pro unit in all the NFL. They allow more pressures and more sacks on the interior D line than anybody in the NFL. CJ Stroud has been pressured more than any quarterback in the NFL. He has faced the 17th most pressures any quarterback has seen in the first 9 weeks of any season since 2000. The Texans have allowed the most unblocked pressures in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. And if you look at, kind of the Texans now, without Nico Collins, let's see, and now without Stephon Diggs, I think it's tougher for CJ Stroud, who usually is great in some of these very, very difficult situations like 3rd and long or even under pressure when he's got to abandon the pocket. Usually the save me CJ recipe still works pretty fine because he's an extraordinary player. It's not working as well the last couple of weeks with him under pressure because he doesn't have the Nico Collins or a Stephon Diggs. He doesn't have a target that he's comfortable throwing to or comfortable waiting on or trying to extend a play for. When he gets Nico Collins back, hopefully that happens versus the Lions. But if it doesn't, whenever he gets him back, it won't solve your pass protection issues. So I'm not going to say that. But I do think it'll mask your pass protection issues. How about this stat? Because we just talked about it. CJ Stroud's under the most pressure of any quarterback in the NFL, literally, but maybe figuratively too. He's faced the second most quick pressures, and that's pressure under 2.5 seconds. He's faced the most unblocked pressures, as we talked about earlier. And the average time to pressure CJ Stroud is 2.5 seconds. 9th fastest in the league. But here's the key. All right. When he is throwing to Nico Collins under pressure, when he's targeting Nico Collins under pressure, he has an 80% completion percentage. And he's averaging 19 yards per attempt in this season. So anytime this season, he's targeting Nico Collins under pressure. And Nico Collins, prior to him getting hurt, was the best receiver in football and was leading the NFL in receiving. And when he's got his number 1 wide receiver under pressure, it wasn't a big deal. Now, these issues, I know the last 3 weeks have been just pitiful. They've been dreadful. They've actually allowed the highest pressure rates on CJ Stroud of his career in the last 3 weeks. So that is inexcusable. But I told you guys after I watched the Texans in week 1, I said, O-line's leaky. O-line is leaky, man. It's a leaky O-line. Nobody really cared. Why? Because he was chunking the ball to Nico Collins downfield, and they were making plays in the passing game. And I was like, hey, you know what? Nico Collins is leading the NFL in receiving. It's going to be great. Nico Collins is amazing. I was like, yeah, that O-line is leaky, though. And then you lose Nico, and you lose Stephon Diggs, and then the leaky O-line, it becomes just the dam broke, all right? And then everything imploded on the Texans. And I do think Nico's just that good and that impactful that the save me CJ formula, the save me CJ recipe, it works a lot better when you have Nico Collins as an ingredient in the formula. But when you don't have Nico Collins and no Stephon Diggs, the save me CJ formula, it's terrible. Like, it's just, there's no way it's going to be successful. You add him back, as I just pointed out to you. How about this? When he's targeting anybody else under pressure this season. So this is mostly post the Nico thing, because when Nico was in there, third down, red zone, under pressure, he was looking for Nico. Freako Nico to the rescue. This season, though, when he's under pressure, targeting anybody else not named Nico, 52% completion percentage, 6 yards per attempt. He drops from 80% completion percentage on targeting Nico under pressure to targeting anybody else under pressure. That drops to 52%. 19 yards per attempt targeting Nico under pressure, 6 yards per attempt targeting anybody else under pressure. It's a different monster altogether. And shout out to Next Gen Stats for those, but it different monster. So not gonna solve the problem, but definitely gonna help you mask the problem. It's like masking odor. You see these people that they want to wear this full body deodorant, but nobody wants to take a shower. Everybody's got full body deodorant these days. Full body deodorant. It's like you can put this anywhere. You can put it under your arms. You can put it on your nether regions. You can put it on your neck. You can put it, on your legs, behind your knees. I'm like, if you need to put full body deodorant, all right, on your nether regions and under your knees and in the small of your back, and you got to put it on your neck, just go take a shower. That's probably what you need. And the Texans need a shower, but they don't want to do that. So shower's not available. So what Nico Collins is going to be, he's going to be that, that full body deodorant they need. He's going to mask that stank for them. You still stank with the full body deodorant. People just can't smell you as potently. Right? Usually it's very potent and odorous, but no, they smell whatever the fragrance of the deodorant is first, and then you got time to get away before they go, what is that? What is that smell? You ever around somebody and say, what is that smell? And you realize, oh, that's a person. That's somebody I'm in the circle with, hanging out with. Oh, I probably should have said that out loud. You go, what is that smell? Oh, well, I don't know what that is. You act like you don't know what it is. Like, I don't know what that was. You just kind of got a whiff or something anyway.
Someone just fake smelling themselves.
Yeah.
That can't be me, right?
It can't be me. It's like, I don't think it's you. I don't think it's you. It's like, that was you. That's the Texans' offensive line right now in pass protection. It stinks. All right. It is odorous. It stinks all to be damned. But Nico Collins is that full body deodorant. You wipe a little bit on there and nobody knows you stink. Well, not immediately. I'm sure through 4 quarters they'll learn. But that's my point about Nico Collins. He does make that kind of impact in that game. All right, so we'll talk more about the Texans and the Lions tomorrow as well. We'll talk about the Thursday night football game tonight. We'll get into that a little bit too. The Ravens and the Bengals. That is going to be a barn burner, because the Ravens can't stop anybody because they have one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Actually, statistically, as Patrick pointed out, it is the worst pass defense in the league. And the Bengals right now, Joe Burrow is one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league. He right now is playing like a top 5 quarterback in the league. That has been overshadowed because Lamar Jackson is playing like the best quarterback in the league right now, and actually having a better season than his MVP season last season. And right now is the front runner for the award. And I believe, and I predicted it, a few weeks ago, I said, guys, I think you could have the MVP and the offensive player of the year in the same backfield. Because I think Derrick Henry's got the best odds for offensive player of the year right now, and I believe Lamar Jackson has got the best odds to MVP. I can't see the voters doing it, giving it to him again, but right now he's giving them no choice. That he keeps playing this well, they're going to have to give another MVP award to Lamar Jackson, and that would be unbelievable.
And we said it's only happened twice in history, and it was Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk did it twice.
Yep. Yeah. You're right. That an offensive player of the year and an MVP in the same backfield, and crazy. That's what we're dealing with right now with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So we'll see. But I think tonight's gonna be a great game because the Ravens are a top 3 offense, and right now Joe Burrow is playing like a top 3 quarterback. All right, so we'll come back. We'll get into who said that. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. Then, based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that. We'll play that when we come back right here on the Rodcast, right here featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Low, and Rod Bear is coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday, and that's when Patrick plays jams that actually reflect the theme or whatever the theme is. And today the theme is dedicated a tribute to the late great Quincy Jones, passed away early this week at the age of 91. And is this Ice-T?
This is this is a mix of, he brought in a bunch of rappers. This is one of his last albums he did, Back on the Block, and he brought in people from different generations to do songs together and do different things. On this track, that is Ice-T you're listening to.
Wow.
But on this track, Big Daddy Kane, Ice-T, Kool Moe Dee, and Melly Mel.
I'm blown away. I had no idea this ever existed.
No, neither did I. Neither did I until the other day when I put this together. As I said, I was trying to show that Quincy Jones had a very eclectic career.
It's amazing. Like, literally, there's almost no genre of music that he didn't work in, or didn't dabble in, and somehow. And then people like asked his advice. They wanted his counsel about, these different genres of music and different songs. Like, he worked with like Frank Sinatra.
Oh yeah, he did "Fly Me to the Moon" in 1964. "Fly Me to the Moon" was Quincy Jones.
What?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
No, and it's like, he did funk and soul, and then like he did everything, and then basically in the 90s shifted over to being in more management
hip-hop.
and kind of running things on a higher level, because he was then working with labels and corporations to put together entertainment groups. So he just continued to do stuff for a very long time and be very influential.
Yeah, you can't do the biopic. You gotta do a series. It'd have to be a series, because you can't just do all that in one movie. 3 hours. It had to be like a 5-6 hour movie. All right, there you go. Thanks, Patrick, for that. The topic for the Big Fat Poll Day is also posted. Patrick wants to know, how many sacks do you think the Longhorns will allow versus Florida? So right now, the winner, 59% of you saying 1 to 2 sacks. All right, time to get to Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. And then based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that.
Yeah, you can. It might happen on game day too, where it's just like he's standing next to me, he doesn't know what to do, and I lean over and tell him. He's right next to me, so that's an easy thing for me to do.
Oh, that's Joe Burrow talking about the running back. What running back?
Khalil Herbert, who they just picked up. He was asked if Khalil Herbert was going to be able to play, learn the playbook fast enough to play, and he was like, "Yeah, we need running game. Yeah, I will lean over and tell him what to do if he doesn't know what to do."
B gap, dog. B gap. Right there. No, I agree. And we just talked about that too. Bengals are what? We talked about why are they a team with a losing record? Because they have the 6th worst run game in the NFL.
Hey,
and what do? Trade for a running back. Yeah, Cowboys. Go look around the league. That's what contenders do.
Second trade the Bengals have made in the last, I believe, like 5 seasons.
Wow.
They don't make trades.
But hey, when they have to, they get it done. All right, thanks, Patrick, for everything you do. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. I'm talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. Remember that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Until next time, hook 'em, man. Peace.